Another world, bone-chilling wind, mysterious ice, hard as iron. It was a forbidden mountain range. Snowstorms have been raging here for thousands of years. To the east of the forbidden mountain range, there were dark forests and merciless times. People were plunged into poverty. Corpses of dead people lay on the roads, and carts passed by them quietly. There have been countless murders here, where vultures devour the remains of flesh, and all these are just games for the nobility. The strong devour the weak. Only the strongest survive. Somewhere in the market, people were shouting and shouting for customers to buy their goods, and a guy on a cart passed by, carrying 2 chests with him. His name is Liu Feng. It had already been more than a month since he arrived in this mysterious other world, although he had made a lot of money selling goods back and forth between Earth and this world, but so far, he hadn't gotten a place to stay. And now he thinks it's time to look for a temporary place to live. The guy went into the tavern, got himself a mug, and turned to the owner. He asked her if she would sell the tavern to him, which surprised her. But Liu Feng again insisted that she sell the place to him. The owner, shocked, told him that this small shop was completely empty and once again asked him if he really wanted to buy it. She concluded by saying that she really hoped he wasn't crazy. Liu Feng just laughed and thought that he wanted to find a place to stay in this city. Moreover, this place is located in the city center and without competition, and that if you open a hotel here, you can earn a lot of money. So with a smile, he turned back to the owner and said that she just needed to sell him the tavern. The girl angrily replied that it wasn't for sale. But Liu Feng continued to bargain. He almost shouted that he could pay her a lot of money, and in doing so, he attracted the attention of the guests of this tavern. A man asked Liu Feng, does he have a lot of money? And he said that then he could just buy the city. Liu Feng looked back at the man in shock and asked about the city again. The man called the guy his friend and said that it was so. It was an elderly man, Baron Carter, and next to him was a young boy, Carter's son, named Fesca. Liu Feng also thought to himself, isn't this his regular customer, Baron Carter, the city Lord Xi Yang? This miser has enough money, so why does he want to sell the city? Aloud, he turned to the harrow and asked if this earth was not his life's foundation. Why he wants to sell it? Baron Carter smiled, exhaled, and said he was getting old. And the younger generation can't live up to his expectations. He just wants to sell his holdings so that he can go to the big city, retire and forget all about it. Liu Feng made a displeased face with a hint of suspicion. Inwardly, he thought that Baron Carter was mocking him, and that he's a sly old fox. But still, he asked how much they wanted for the city. The old man grinned and said that he only needed 100 gold coins. Liu Feng seethed with rage and shouted that he had lost his mind. 100 gold coins equals 4 million sheep equals 500,000 cows equals sit and wait for death for 3 generations. Liu Feng thought about the latter and imagined the beautiful girls surrounding the guy. Also that he's not stupid, and not a newbie who just arrived in this world. Baron Carter said, is that too expensive? And he said that then he would also grant Liu Feng a noble title. Liu Feng crossed his arms and calmly said that he was refusing. Fez abruptly held a knife to Liu Feng's neck and said that he should be satisfied that his father had offered to buy the city for him. And how dare he refuse? Liu Feng angrily asked him if he was forcing him to buy the city. Baron Carter stepped between them and said contentedly that harmony brought wealth, and if it was a question of price, they could discuss it. He asked Liu Feng how many gold coins he thought were suitable. Liu Feng spread his hands to the side and said that there was no question of 100 gold coins if he didn't even have 30 gold coins. Baron Carter beamed and said good luck, just for 30 gold coins. Agreed. Liu Feng was shocked and thought that Baron Carter wanted to sell the city for 30 gold coins. He wasn't trying to trick him. Baron Carter, still smiling happily, said that as soon as he saw Liu Feng, he immediately wanted to make a special offer. Liu Feng replied that he didn't have that kind of money with him. Baron Carter replied that the guy could also use some of his jewelry to make up for the missing amount. Liu Feng immediately became alert and thought of the jewels. Baron Carter went on to say that, for example, jewelry such as crystal glasses or something like that. I thought about the trunks the guy was carrying. Liu Feng was surprised when he heard about the crystal goblets, and he thought to himself that they had been deep in conversation for some time, and it turned out that Baron Carter was not taking his eyes off his glasses, which were in the chests. This is something that has traveled tens of thousands of miles on Earth in a place in the Far East and from the most popular stores. Yue Run Y Store welcomes you, the sign read. There was also a special offer of 10 yuan for 5 glasses, and signs called out to customers, telling them to hurry to get 5 glasses at the best price. Liu Feng took out a chest of glasses and Carter, and his son's eyes lit up with interest and happiness. Baron Carter took the glass to look at and said that he had once been lucky enough to see a crystal glass in the Duke's courtyard. Yet it was as clear and magnificent as this one. Liu Feng thought in shock that they only needed crystal glasses and that people from this world were too easily deceived. Meanwhile, Baron Carter and his son were happily and charmingly inspecting the glass. They said it was really great. Liu Feng also thought, if he had known about this earlier, he would have brought back a few more, and that, in any case, he can go back and forth between this world and Earth once a day. Baron Carter called Liu Feng a friend and happily asked if he had any other treasures. Liu Feng thought to himself that this bastard wanted to see if he still had anything of value left, and even if he did have something, it wasn't good. After all, they clearly want to kill Liu Feng for the goods. Liu Feng thought that if only one glass counted as a treasure, then he would just collect his treasures and put them in his storage, and see what Baron Carter does then. Aloud, he said that he would open his chest for them to see. In the chest were necessary and interesting things from Earth, as well as a couple of ordinary saucers. Liu Feng placed his hand on the chest, and an electric charge passed through it. And then all the interesting things from Earth disappeared. Baron Carter was beaming in anticipation of the treasure. Liu Feng opened the chest and said that these were his other things. There were just a couple of very ordinary saucers and a rag. Liu Feng happily turned to Baron Carter and asked if he needed anything. Baron Carter was upset and said he didn't need these things yet. Liu Feng asked him if he was sure, and he said it was very unfortunate. Liu Feng and Baron Carter and his son were driving through the wheat fields. The Baron just said that these are wheat farms near Yang City. Liu Feng said that he was also growing quite well. Baron Carter said of course, although one must beware of horse thieves who come to rob grain during the autumn harvest. He spoke to Liu Feng, pointed to the city in front of him, and said that Yang City was located here. Liu Feng saw a beautiful city in the form of a huge castle. He lit up his eyes with delight and said that it was totally worth the price. Baron Carter coughed into his fist and said wasn't there. At the fork in the path, he pointed to another path instead of the one Liu Feng was looking at. When the guy turned around in that direction, the Baron pointed and proudly said that this was their only Yang City. There was a ruined village that was about to collapse altogether soon. Liu Feng was upset and said that he should have guessed. He thought, even if the money was pouring in, he still wouldn't be able to get any of it. They stopped at Yang City. As Liu Feng drove past, he noticed poorly dressed people begging for food. Some spat after the newcomers and called them parasites, and some asked them to take pity and serve them. They arrived at the bell tower. A bell rang out, calling all the residents to gather. People didn't understand that this time. Some suggested that maybe they want to introduce new taxes or something like that. Someone shouted and asked when they would leave them alone, and someone asked them to keep their voices down so that these parasites could not hear them. Baron Carter addressed the people from the bell tower, calling them his favorite countrymen. He introduced himself and said that he was announcing today that he would grant the title of Baron to Baron Liu Feng, and he said that from this day forward he would be the lord of this city. Some of the people were glad that they could only hope that this new Baron wouldn't raise any more taxes on them. And someone told them not to even think about it, and they said this new Baron was just another blood-sucking parasite. Baron Carter turned to Liu Feng, called him the city lord, and said that Yang City was in his hands, and now he was leaving on his own. He asked Liu Feng to continue his speech. Liu Feng went to this little balcony to see the people and greeted them all. Happily, he began to say that starting today, he would. But before he could finish, People started shouting at him to get lost and calling him a parasite and a bloodsucker. They shouted that all the people's money had already been spent by people like him. Someone even threw a rock, shouting down with the parasites and bloodsuckers. Someone shouted that they should start a riot and beat him. Li Feng thought that it was no wonder that Carter had sold this city to him so cheaply. While the people were rioting and expressing their discontent, Baron Carter was showing his discontent to the affected people. He said he was seriously wounded and had been on hunger strike for 7 days, and he asked them how it was that they couldn't defeat him with so many people. The injured people called him master and said that he was too strong, and that, to be honest, they were not able to bring him. Barona Carter got angry and said that they were completely useless, but then an idea popped into his head. He mounted his horse and shouted to Li Feng, addressing him as the lord of the city. Li Feng heard him and pricked up his ears. Baron Carter Milo said that he left him a secret gift in the castle dungeon. Li Feng asked again about the gift, to which Baron Carter replied that he should go and see it right now, and if he was late, the castle would be destroyed. Li Feng shouted, asking Wu, the castle will be demolished, and he rushed to this castle, saying what the hell is inside the dungeon. Li Feng entered the castle and went to the dungeon. Large rats ran along the way, and torches burned on the walls. Li Feng walked through the dungeon and looked at the torture instruments that were also present there. Aloud, he asked what the hell gift Baron Carter had left in this place. Then Li Feng came across a cage. He asked loudly if anyone was there. He shone his fanner, but saw nothing, and then he asked again if anyone was here. There's silence in response. Then he took and pulled the bars of the cage, hoping that everything was old and they would open. But instead, the wall around the edges of the bars began to crumble. Li Feng noticed this and said that it was bad because it was falling. Then the guy jumped and dodged to the left, then jumped to the right so that the bars wouldn't fall on him. When he jumped back, he dared to ask Grid if she still thought she might fall on him. And he wanted to say without a chance, as the bars fell on his toes. Li Feng screamed in pain. As he shuffled inside the cage, almost crying, he said it hurt like hell. To himself, he wondered what it was. And I saw something lying on the hay near the wall. He thought it was a girl cat. So there really are folklore races in this world. He sat down beside her and told her to wake up. He took her by the shoulder and asked her if she was still alive. The cat girl whispered for water. Li Feng looked at her and wondered if this was the gift Lord Carter had mentioned, and he thought that he couldn't just do nothing and watch her die. Li Feng concentrated, stretched out his hand, and magic waves shot out from it, which formed a portal. In that portal were boxes with various and other things from the world of Earth. Li Feng started to say out loud, looking at his things, that he needed to find something good for her to drink, seeing how weak she is right now, and he said it would be better if she had some energy drinks. He reached through the portal for a box of drinks. Selecting a bottle, he poured some of the liquid into her mouth. The cat girl hummed, squeezed her eyes shut, and opened them abruptly. She spat out the entire contents directly at Li Feng. He immediately started coughing, and the cat girl didn't waste any time, kneed him right in the face. Li Feng flew away and wondered what was going on. The cat girl started jumping back and forth in the cell, moving from one corner to the other too fast. She leaped at the guy, let out a meow, and was about to deliver the final blow. Li Feng screamed for help and thought that this was the end. His entire life began to flash through his mind. He thought he was going to die, but he doesn't want to die. After all, he still hadn't married a fair-skinned, rich, and beautiful woman, and it didn't reach its peak in life. Abruptly stopping his screeching, he noticed that the girl cat was lying on top of him. Aloud, he asked the void if it had fainted. With a relieved sigh, he said that he was safe. He carried her to one of the castle rooms and laid her on the bed. He looked at her and swore. He said that to think that she could be so beautiful. The mysterious cat girl's name was Mina. Li Feng looked at her and wondered why Carter had locked her in the dungeon. Mina's stomach rumbled loudly. He was slightly embarrassed and wondered if, considering what the Baron had said earlier, she might have fainted from hunger. Li Feng opened the teleport again and said that he seemed to remember that he still had some rice in his storage. He'll get it out and make porridge. When the teleport was opened, it created some waves of wind, from which a piece of paper lying on the table flew across the balcony and fell directly on the face of a poor passerby. It was an old man. He took the paper off his face, cursed, and asked what that thing was. When he read the contents, he was completely shocked. He started shouting and calling people to come to him and see it. Liu Feng also made porridge. He scooped it into a spoon, blew on it a little, and popped the spoon into Mina's mouth. The cat girl swallowed the contents, her consciousness starting to return to her. She thought it smelled so good. Is it rice porridge? Opening her eyes abruptly, she pushed herself up from the bed. She looked at Liu Feng and got angry, shouting that it was him again. She leaped at him and grabbed him by the throat. She raised her hand to strike and told him to say that he made her eat it. The guy, despite the fact that his throat was squeezed, somehow said that it was rice porridge. Mina loosened her grip and looked down at his hands, which were holding a bowl of porridge. She thought she was so close. She said it was really rice porridge and what a nice smell. But Mina immediately pulled herself together and began to say in her head that she should keep her temper in check. After all, people can't be so kind. She hadn't forgotten how she'd been caught, but her stomach was rumbling treacherously. She got off Li Fen, pointed her finger at him, and angrily told him to eat a bowl full of this rice porridge. Li Feng said well and even drank it off the plate, while Mina watched with fascination. Li Feng seemed to blossom from how delicious and satisfying it was. He said it was very good and belched. Mina got even angrier and told him to eat more this time. Liu Feng agreed and said that he would eat until there was nothing left and raised the plate to his lips again. The cat girl watched him and thought that if he really wanted to harm her, he would have had the opportunity to do so just a moment ago. So there will be nothing wrong with this porridge. Then she asked for another cup, and again another cup, and again, and again, and again another. Li Feng, holding a bowl, asked her if she was okay. Mina was sitting at a table filled with empty cups. She hiccuped and said she was full. Li Feng looked at this and thought that she had just eaten a month's worth of his rice. Mina came to her senses and wondered what had just happened, and that people are too terrible. She coughed and ordered him to let her go immediately, or else she would kill him. Li Feng fell into a stupor. He thought that she had just eaten all of his rice porridge, and she was immediately turning her back on him. Aloud, he pointed to the door and told her that no one was stopping her. The door was over there. Mina headed for the door and heard the guy tell her to be careful out there, and to make sure that she doesn't get caught by Carter and other bandits in the future. Mina also thought that Liu Feng seemed to be different from the other nobles. The guy smiled at her and winked. Mina was a little embarrassed. But then she heard something, and she whirled around to face Liu Feng and lunged at him, saying that he was a scoundrel and that there was an ambush outside. Mina grabbed Liu Feng by the throat, said that he was a scoundrel and that there was an ambush outside. Poor Liu Feng, almost the executioner, said that he was the only one in the entire castle who could possibly be ambushed. I asked her how many times it had already happened. Maybe she could push him somewhere else. He asked her if she was trying to rip his head off. There was a commotion from the locked gate. People gathered near the castle and shouted that they were parasites, that they were bloodsuckers, shouted to open the gate. Some of them shouted that they would not let them live anyway, because death to them. Mina continued to hold onto Liu Feng's neck and fiercely told him that he was still saying that he hadn't deceived her. The guy told her that he didn't know what was going on. Rioting people entered the castle and shouted outside the closed doors, behind which were Liu Feng and Ming. People shouted that they should be killed. They took a log to break down the doors. Among these people there was a certain thin key, and they began to beat with a log. Liu Feng turned to Mina and said that they weren't his people, and that she needed to hide faster. The cat girl maliciously asked the question, what? The guy told her that if he really wanted to hurt her, she would have been dead long ago. Mina didn't respond to his words, but she was a little surprised. The crowd broke down the doors, and Hexen Key was among the first to break through. He saw Liu Feng and shouted that there he was, and to keep people from letting him escape. They surrounded one Liu Feng and started poking him with everything sharp that the common people had.
Liu Feng angrily asked what he was doing. but then he was addressed as the city lord. It was old man Ba Fu, who had been hit by the leaf. He said they were already destitute and had nothing left. He asked Liu Feng why he was still trying to collect taxes. Liu Feng shouted that he didn't order the taxes to be collected and asked the old man if that was the case. Old man Ba Fu showed him the hand that was holding the same piece of paper and asked the guy what it was then. Liu Feng thought that it wasn't his, and that half a month ago, didn't he sell a batch of straw paper to Baron Carter as sheepskin parchment? Out loud, Liu Feng asked that it was a sheepskin parchment, wasn't it? And he said that if they wanted to ask where this parchment came from, it probably flew out of his castle. But people kept saying that it turns out that Liu Feng won't stop collecting taxes anyway, and that he still wants to live them out of the world. Someone said that his younger brother had starved to death a few days ago, and that Liu Feng still wants to introduce more taxes. People called him the devil incarnate. Liu Feng himself thought that they must be joking. He only sold a batch of straw paper, so why did he incur the wrath of all these people? And the people grew more and more angry and continued to rebel. They shouted that if he did not let them live, then they would not let him live either. They shouted that they should kill Liu Feng. Xin Qi swung his sickle at the guy and shouted that he was going to kill him. But someone knocked the sickle out of the guy's hand with a stone, so that the gun flew to the floor. It was Mina. She crawled out of her hiding place and shouted to the people to control themselves. Xin Qi asked her who the hell she was, and Mina kept saying that according to the law, if the common people kill someone from the nobility, all those who rebelled, as well as their family members, will all be sentenced to death by hanging. The people came to their senses and moderated their ardor. They started saying that she was right. And one of them, a man, said that it doesn't matter to him if he dies, but as for his 2 children. Liu Feng thought, didn't he tell her to hide? So why? But then Mina asked him if he was okay. Liu Feng imagined himself with a sickle in his head and replied listlessly that well, probably yes. The girl grunted. Old man Ba Fu asked angrily, so what? He showed the contents of the parchment and said that Liu Feng would raise their taxes by 50%. And he asked how this was different from directly putting them to death. Liu Feng fell into shock. He picked up the parchment and studied it. It said notification. To celebrate the birthday of the city lord's favorite horse, taxes will be increased by another 50% from this day on. Specific taxes include the following: road tax, wheat transport tax, marriage tax, childbirth tax, sleep tax, sun tax, and was signed Carter. Liu Feng, when he read all this, wondered what the fuck. And I also thought that all this fuss was actually because of this notification, and that this Carter guy was using him as a scapegoat. He turned this permanent to the people and told them to look carefully. This notice was issued by the previous city lord. The people pondered and began to talk. Xin Qi angrily shouted that it didn't matter if it was the previous lord. Aren't they all members of the same group? The guy calmly said that he was Liu Feng, and that he, the current city lord, and in the name of the city lord, he declares that the citizens of Ziyang City will never see their taxes raised again. While saying this, Liu Feng tore the parchment into pieces and threw them up, surprising all the people. People didn't understand and asked if it was a joke. Someone was asking if they could actually believe the nobleman's words. But there were also those who shouted that Liu Feng had torn the ad to pieces, and if it was true, then there would be enough food for everyone. Liu Feng had said that only by supporting the happiness of their citizens could they, the city lords, be happy. And he said that he would guide everyone in acquiring wealth and strive for an era of peace and prosperity. But to do this, they need to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty. People thought that although they really didn't understand it, it seemed pretty amazing. Old man Ba Fu said that if this was really the case, then they were thanking him for this great kindness and grace. Liu Feng, happy and satisfied, said that of course it was true, because he was Liu Feng, and he would never go back on his word. The crowd began to disperse. Among them, someone said that he hoped that what the city lord said was true. Someone said that it would be great if this was the case, and someone suggested that we first go back and see what happens.
In one tavern sat Baron Carter and his son Fez. Fezca said that he had heard that Kaiyan City had already become a complete mess, and that a group of peasants broke into the city lord's mansion. Baron Carter replied that it looked like he was too worried that the horse thieves hadn't shown up yet. And he didn't expect that Liu Feng wouldn't even be able to keep a bunch of peasants under control. Happy Fez said yes, and it looked like the city of Yan would be back in their hands much sooner than they expected. And he said that my father was really great. Then someone called out to my lord that it was bad news. Something's wrong. An unknown old man burst into the tavern where Baron Carter and Fezca were sitting. The old man turned to the Baron, called him his lord, and said he had bad news. and that the unexpected happened. Fesca, sipping from a mug, asked what had happened to make the old man so excited. To which the old man replied that Liu Feng had already convinced the people to disperse, and he had also released this female beast. Fez put the mug down on the table with a loud sound and asked, Liu Feng just let go of the female beast, and he said he was going to stab the bastard to death. Baron Carter said calm down. Fesca was indignant, and he turned to his father and said that they had spent a lot of money to buy this female beast. Baron Carter calmly stroked his mustache and asked his son what the hurry was for. He also said that Liu Feng was now the city lord, and that it won't be long before Baron Omar puts him in his place. Fez had an epiphany. He immediately understood and said that his father was very wise. The sun was already setting, and Liu Feng was lying on his bed, resting. He said it scared the hell out of him, and now finally it's almost cold. Exhaling, he thought he needed to lie down a little longer. Mina was in his room, standing next to his bed. She said that she would definitely leave now. Liu Feng opened his eyes, got up from the bed, and told her to stop. Her wounds haven't healed yet. Mina was already at the door and wanted to leave, but she stopped and listened to him. And he also said that if she went out like this, wouldn't someone else catch her like last time? The girl turned to him and said angrily that she would just kill them. Liu Feng exhaled and told her that she could stay here for a while. Until he healed his wounds, he wouldn't leave, and in any case, there was nothing he could do to her. I asked her if that was true. Mina told him that people were always up to mischief. I asked the guy how he could be so good. Liu Feng smiled radiantly and said that it was very boring to be alone in the castle, and if she stayed and kept him company, they could chat. Mina said nothing to indicate that she agreed. Liu Feng asked her so she wasn't afraid that he would kill her, to which Mina replied that not a bit of it. And Liu Feng continued to say that besides, since she was so strong, if she wanted to kill him, it wouldn't be difficult for her. Warm water filled the tub. Mina stripped off her rags and waded into the warm, gentle water. She thought that she felt so good now, and that it had been a long time since she had had a good bath. She touched her hand where the big bruise was and hissed in pain. She said that everything hurts, and that people are disgusting. She recalled being in prison, fighting her hunger, and then a man comes in with a basket of bread in his hands. He called Mina a poor girl and asked her if she was hungry, and he showed her the bread, saying that it was food for her. Mina's eyes shone with joy, and she ate what she was given. After that, she immediately fell asleep. She could hear people standing around talking. The man who brought her the bread told someone that it was a top-quality item, worth at least 1 silver coin, and she heard another voice say that he was buying. Barely opening her eyes, Mina saw that the person who had just bought it was Baron Carter. Mina threw up her hands and said that they were cunning people, and that they were all just liars. Standing outside the bathroom door was Liu Feng. He kept glancing at the girl and thought that even though it wasn't good, he still wanted to know the differences between humans and beastmen. He thought that he was only here to broaden his horizons. Liu Feng continued to spy on the cat girl. Her beauty made his nose bleed. He thought it was too awesome. Mina heard some sounds and screamed, asking who was there. Liu Feng outside the door said it was him, and that he brought her something to wash with. He opened the door a crack and threw a bar of soap at it. Mina didn't know what it was. She sniffed it and thought it smelled really nice, and that the smell of that person. Liu Feng was lying on the sofa and said out loud that he almost got caught, but luckily he was quick-witted. Aloud, he asked if cats were not afraid of water and if he needed to prepare a tray for it. However, asking her about such things is a bit awkward. When Mina slightly opened the door, Liu Feng immediately got up from the sofa. He picked up a piece of paper from the table and began to pretend to work. Mina entered the room and then Liu Feng glanced at her. The girl timidly said that these things didn't seem to suit her. She was wearing only a long white shirt. Liu Feng drew blood from his nose at the sight and thought that the washed cap was a girl. This is the kind of thing that could only be seen in the other world. Mina saw the look in his eyes and, with a touch of anger and embarrassment, asked him what he was looking at. And she began to cover herself with her hands. Liu Feng timidly replied that no matter what. He coughed, pointed at the plate of food, and said that he had prepared some rice porridge for her. Mina was glad in her mind that rice porridge, and her mouth watered. Out loud, she said that she liked rice porridge, but as she tried to throw something out, Li Feng interrupted her and said that he swore that he wouldn't dare. Mina finished that she was going to kill him and picked up a plate of rice porridge. And she said that in any case, they are people always planning something bad. Li Feng confusedly told her that he was different. Mina sat down on a chair with a cup in her hands and said that it was a good thing he wasn't the same, because he was a person who spied on someone washing up. Li Feng was startled and thought that he had been discovered, and that if people found out about it, how would he live in this city? The girl ate porridge and thought that it was so delicious, and that for the sake of this rice porridge, out loud, she told Li Feng that she thought he should pick up his things as soon as possible, and that she thinks that in a few days he won't want to work as a lord anymore, but will just wet himself and run away. Li Feng asked her in shock. Mina ate all the porridge and put the plate on the table, and she began to say that they were horse thieves. There are 20 days left until the autumn harvest. When that time comes, horse thieves will come to steal the harvest. In the end, they might leave him as well, and then they'll take over his castle, and they will become the new owners of this city. She also told him that he didn't have any knights and wasn't running away, and don't let him tell her that he wants to die. Feng also thought to himself that it was no wonder that Baron Carter had so easily sold Xianyang City and its noble title to him. And who would have thought that he dug his own grave? Mina jumped out of her chair and said it was a pity she wanted to go south. But on the other hand, she could stay and watch them stupid humans kill each other. Li Feng asked her again, does she want to watch them kill each other? I asked her if it was because she was afraid of horse thieves. Mina said resentfully that she was afraid. And she said that apart from the anger of the goddess of snow and ice, nothing frightens her. Li Feng asked her again about the goddess of snow and ice. Mina said that was true. And she said that it was all because of that terrible cold storm that lasted for 5 years. And she started telling me that 5 years ago, the goddess of snow and ice suddenly got angry, and a bone-chilling wind blew, white snow falling to the horizon, turning their land into a world of ice and snow. They had no choice but to move south. However, the people's countries were also shrouded in snow and ice. She asked Li Feng how he didn't know that. The guy hesitated, hacknelled, and said that at that time he lived far to the east. The girl raised an eyebrow and said that in any case, she thought he'd better get out of here as soon as possible, and that the main thing is not to die. Li Feng stood up and asked with a smile, isn't it more than half a month before the autumn harvest? And he told her she didn't have to worry about him. After all, it has its own path. A young man with a smile on his face was running away from the tiger. He shouted at him to run to him. He also called him Stupid Tiger. This guy's name was Niu Wu. As he continued to run away, he kept yelling at the animal to catch him. And now a small pile of stones appeared on the way. Niu Wu jumped on top of her and started calling out to the beast. When the tiger swung its big, clawed paw at the boy, he jumped down behind the rocks and told the beast that he would not play with him again. On a hill with a spear in his hands, a man stood and watched this. Then he suddenly starts calling out names. Niu Da, Niu Er, Niu San, Niu Sai. I shouted to them that it was time to start their show. 4 guys appeared out of nowhere. 2 of them had spears and their names were Niu Da and Niu Er, and the other 2 held a net and their names were Niu San and Niu Sai. They shouted to the tiger to watch out for them and attacked him, so they caught a big tiger. The main man with the spear said when the tiger was tied up that the gift was ready and it was time to go. The boys agreed in unison. The carriage arrived at Xianyang City. People were interested in the arrivals. Someone asked if it wasn't the Niu family. And someone told him that ever since they refused to be hired in Baron Carter's service, they hadn't come to Xianyang City. Old man Bafu and young Sinki were watching them. The guy asked what had happened since they came. Bafu started to say that they were going to. Then a hunch struck the old man, and he asked if they had come to see Li Feng. Sin Ki practically screamed and said that it was impossible, and that if this noble brat begged the king to come, he wouldn't be able to invite Niu Ben's family, and he said it was probably something else. and that everyone knows that Uncle New would never have ended up running errands for those leeches. Two girls were sitting on the cart, while the boys were walking behind and dragging the tiger. One of them was called Me, and said that Liu Feng was such a good guy, even though he had become a noble lord. He sent them an invitation letter. It looks like they saved the wrong person back then. The other girl, a younger one, was named Nicole. She was daydreaming about Liu Feng and longed to meet him again as soon as possible. Liu Feng shouted from the castle that he was on his way. He reached out to Uncle Newben, me, and the guys and said that he was looking forward to meeting them. The New family approached Liu Feng and said that they had a gift for him, and that they were congratulating him on becoming a city lord, and they threw the tiger's body on the floor. Liu Feng's eyes lit up with delight and said that it was unbelievable. He walked up to the tiger's body and happily asked that this guy weighed at least 300 kilograms now. And in my head, I wondered if it would be possible to make a tiger fur coat out of it. Liu Feng spoke aloud to Uncle Niu and said that they had finally arrived. I asked them what other gifts they had brought. Mina looked at the body of the dead animal and said that people are hypocritical. Mei turned to Nicole and asked her if she didn't constantly say that she wanted to see Liu Feng. She told her to come over and say hello. I gave her a little push on the shoulder to get her to go. But the girl tripped over the tiger and almost fell, but Liu Feng shouted at her to be careful and caught her in his arms. The girl clung to the guy with her body and was a little embarrassed. Liu Feng felt the girl's chest pressed against him and happily said that he hadn't seen her for a long time, and he's sure they've gotten bigger. Liu Feng then realized his mistake and swore in his mind and thought about the fact that he had said it out loud. Nicole addressed the guy as her brother Liu Feng and asked him what he meant by her getting taller. Liu Feng immediately said in his own defense that of course. He hadn't seen her in a long time, and of course she was taller, and he laughed. Standing next to Uncle Niu, Mei laughed and thought that this guy Liu Feng was becoming more and more pleasing to the eyes. Uncle Niu coughed and said that enough of these pleasantries, and it was time to talk business. He addressed his sons, calling each of them by name, and asked them to swear allegiance to Liu Feng. Liu Feng turned to Uncle Niu Ben and asked him if he was also here to not help him, and said that he still wanted Uncle Niu to be the castle's steward. The man told him that Liu Feng's kindness filled his heart, but he should know that his leg is cut off, and he can't help him in any way. Liu Feng snapped his fingers and told him to make sure he had a way to help him walk like a normal person again. The entire Niu family was surprised and looked at the guy. Liu Feng put the prosthetic leg on Uncle Niu Ben, buttoned it up, and said that everything was ready, and that Uncle Niu Ben should try to get up. The entire Niu family was excited. The man left his spear, focused, and got up from his chair. A neat step with the prosthesis, then a second step. His wife, Mei, was on the verge of crying and pissing. Niu Ben himself said that he couldn't believe it, and he said that he can walk normally now. Mai couldn't help but start crying, saying that this is great, this is really great, and Nicole, with a smile, comforted her and reminded her mother of her makeup. The children of the Niu family were happy that their father could walk again, and it was all very wonderful. Niu Ben held Mei's hand and asked her not to cry. Liu Feng happily said that after a little practice, Uncle Niu Ben would be able to walk just like everyone else. The man looked at him, pulled away from his wife, gathered all his sons, and went to Liu Feng. The guy got a little excited and asked what they were doing, and the male half of the Niu family unanimously turned to the young master, Liu Feng, and said that they would be his sword to slay his enemies. And even if they had to give their lives for it, they wouldn't flinch. And they saluted. Liu Feng smiled, walked up to Uncle Niu Ben, and said that he was sincerely grateful to them for their faith in him. And he told the man that he was now the steward of this castle, and that he would teach Liu Feng how to run this city. In a certain food store, someone shouted that a letter had arrived from Baron Omar. They asked him what he wrote. Someone grinned and said that the plan to capture Aksai Yang City was about to start. In the morning in this shop, there was an indignant question. What? This peasant was indignant and asked, "What are 3 copper coins for 500 grams of grain?" And he asked why there weren't 2 coins yesterday. The salesman smiled nastily and said that yesterday, it was yesterday, And today, it's today, and whether the peasant likes it or not. Kresgen was terribly angry and was about to respond with a couple of affectionate words, and the fat salesman thought that the prices were raised by order of Baron Omar, and that the peasants are stupid. Let them just accept their fate. People outside the window of this shop somewhere rushed. Someone said that he had heard that the city lord's castle would start giving out food for free. And someone suggested that we go check it out and see for ourselves. The guy who wanted to buy grain got angry and asked the seller that he wanted to raise his prices. And then I sent him and said that he would not buy anything. I threw the sack of grain on his desk. The unpleasant salesman asked in shock if they were giving out food for free, and exclaimed, "What the hell?" The sound of a metal cymbal rang through the village. This was Uncle Newben's way of summoning the people. When the ordinary people began to gather, he told them to come and look at their vacancies, and also said that they were hiring clerks, hunters, and strong men. With a good salary. There were notices on the board, one of which was for hire, and it said clerks. 120 copper coins per month. Hunters. 120 copper coins per month. Strong people. 60 copper coins per month. When people saw this, they didn't believe it and started to get indignant. Someone said that how can the salary be so high, and it's all a hoax. Someone said that how can a noble person be so kind. Someone said that it was twice as much as the previous lords, and there are also those who said that he was definitely trying to deceive them. Then the crowd began to part and turn. The city lord loudly told them that he was Liu Feng, and he always keeps his promises. The people of Xi Yang City saw their lord Liu Feng and couldn't believe it was him. He was wearing a different and chic outfit, and Mina was walking next to him in a maid outfit. People started admiring him and saying how beautiful he was. Someone started discussing his clothes and saying that he had never seen one before. And someone looked at Mina, thought that she was his servant, but it still looks great. Liu Feng and Mina approached Uncle Niu, and then Liu Feng turned to him and said that now he would take care of it. Uncle Niu nodded in agreement. Then Liu Feng turned to his people and asked them to listen to him. And then he loudly said that everything that is written here is true, but still, job candidates will have to pass the test, and he said that as long as everyone passes the test, they will not only receive a monthly salary. Then the people felt the delicious smell of food and thought, "What is this smell?" And it smells very tasty. And Liu Feng continued to say that they could also eat this food as much as they wanted, and he pointed to the side where there was a huge mountain of roasted pigs and a big pot of delicious noodles. But there were also delicious portions of beef noodles on the table. The people's mouths watered at the sight and smell. Someone thought that you could die for this smell, and someone looked at the roast boar and admired. There were also those who looked lovingly at the noodle plate. Liu Feng asked the people if anyone wanted to try it. I told them they wouldn't lose anything anyway. Sin Qi turned to Old Man Bafu and told him that everyone seemed to want it, but if it was a trap, it might end badly. Bafu told him that he would let the old man start. Liu Feng sat down at the table, flanked by Mina and Uncle Niu. Liu Feng asked the people who wanted to be the first. Old Man Bafu among the crowd stretched out his hand with a stick and shouted what he wants. He came up to the desk and said he wanted to try out as a clerk. He gave the parchment to Liu Feng, saying that he had written something. Liu Feng took the letter and unfolded it and began to read the contents. It said that Old Man Bafu had a dream. The dream is that one day every resident of Xi Yang City will be able to eat their fill, wear warm clothes, and best of all, eat meat every day. And also that he dreams that one day everyone will be able to live in houses without holes and sleep in warm beds. Liu Feng thought that Old Man Bafu's writing wasn't bad after reading it, and even more surprising, his concern for the well-being of others. He told the old man aloud that he had passed, and from now on, he is the clerk of Xi Yang City. Liu Feng turned to Nicole and asked her to serve the old man some beef noodles as well as roast pork. Nicole carried the tray to the thoughtful old man. He drooled at the sight and smell of the delicious food. He clutched the tray and told her to give the old man a taste as soon as possible. After recovering a little, he coughed and said that the old man would try it first, on behalf of everyone else. I started eating noodles. When he tried it, the old man's face changed in an instant. People noticed this and started asking what was wrong with old Bofu and if he had been poisoned. Sin-Ki immediately walked out of the crowd with a knife and shouted that it was a trap after all. He shouted to Uncle Bofu and said that he would save him, and rushed into the fray. Mena immediately became alert and was ready to respond to Sin-Ki's strike. But then old man Bofu said it was so delicious, and even shed a tear of happiness. Sin-Ki stumbled and fell to the ground in shock. Old man Bofu went on to say that he had never eaten anything so delicious and felt like he had lived his entire life in vain. Then he started laughing. Sin-Ki turned to Uncle Bofu and, in a frightened but angry tone, told him not to make such a frightening expression when Bofu was agitated. Liu Feng, Ming, and Uncle Niu simply didn't say anything. But people immediately got excited and started discussing it. Some people asked, is it really so delicious? And they said they wanted to go and try it. Others suggested that he go and enlist as a soldier, and someone said that he was literate and he wanted to work as a clerk. Nuda was standing near the field of conscripts. He shouted for everyone to pay attention, and she said that if they could walk on a balancing log, cross an obstacle course, pass through a thorny area, and climb over a high wall, they would pass the test. Sin-Ki stood among the crowd and thought that everyone had left, so why not give it a try? Liu Feng, Mina, and Nicole were standing on the castle's balcony, watching everything that was happening. Liu Feng said out loud happily that everything was fine, and he didn't expect everyone to be delighted. He turned to Nicole, addressed her, patted her on the head, and said that it was all thanks to her skill. Nicole was all embarrassed and said that it wasn't that the young master had taught her well. Liu Feng had already turned to Mina, wanted to pet her too, and only managed to say that he was grateful to her as well. How Mina had pulled away and told him that he could say whatever he wanted, but he kept his paws off her. Liu Feng said that he just wanted to thank her, and that her suggestion to use food to attract everyone to participate was a very good idea. Mina grunted and walked away from him. Liu Feng was upset and thought that he almost stroked her ears. Nicole watched all this and thought, after all this, what does this girl mean to little brother Liu Feng? And that she looks very dangerous, but little brother Liu Feng doesn't even seem to be paying attention. Meanwhile, on the conscript field, people were trying to pass the obstacle course, thinking only of beef noodles and pork. It was very hard for everyone. People were constantly dropping out of obstacles. Fell off a log, Nuda shouted out. The girl's dress caught on the wire, so she's out. Fell off the rope, also dropped out. Uncle Niu watched this and said out loud that he didn't know where young Master Liu Feng got such things from, but this course would be difficult even for their new family, even though they had been training since they were young, let alone these people who had never trained in their entire lives. People complained that someone had taken something for themselves, but for someone it was very difficult. Uncle Niu thought to himself again, if this continued, how would they be able to recruit even a single soldier? Liu Feng was sitting at the table and reading the book, The Art of War. He exhaled and said that he didn't expect so few people to pass the tests. Then Nicole called out to him, calling him young master. Liu Feng turned his head and saw a girl with a tray. She told him she'd brought something to eat. She put a plate on the table for him and told him it was from a freshly baked red bean pie and a cup of coffee. Liu Feng thanked her. He took a piece from the plate and said how soft and sweet the aroma was, and when I tried it, I said it was so sweet, but not cloying either. He turned to Nicole and said that her skill amazed him. Nicole was embarrassed and timidly said that she was glad that the young master liked it. But then from the plate, someone took all the pieces of pie. It was Mena who was sitting on the couch eating them, and she said out loud that they were really delicious. Nicole forced a smile and said she was glad she liked it. In the back of her mind, it was a small mental trauma for her. She thought that she had been doing this all morning just for Liu Feng's little brother, and now she can't believe that Mena just took everything away. I thought it was all gone, but then someone addressed Liu Feng as a lord and said that something bad had happened. It was Bofu. He came along with Uncle Niu. The man called him young master and said, right now, the townspeople are preparing to leave the city and beg. Liu Feng spat out his coffee in surprise. He put the mug down on the table and asked what was wrong. Uncle Niu started saying that anyone who couldn't pass the test wouldn't be able to get provisions. And he said that in addition, these vile grain merchants were waiting for this opportunity to raise the price of food by 30%. Bufu had said that everyone was starving now. Uncle Niu addressed Liu Feng as a young master and asked if he could soften the recruitment standards a bit. Mina listened to the conversation and began to hush with a grin. She said the test was so simple and yet they were such weak people. Uncle Niu was angry and wanted to be rude to her, but Liu Feng slammed the table and called out to Knight Niu Ben. I told him straight out that the standards would not be lowered. Niu Ben and Bufu were about to protest, but Liu Feng continued to say that, however, as for merchants who profit from other people's misfortunes. Outside the food stall, Liu Feng, Old Man Bufu, Knight Niu Ben, and that unpleasant merchant were all gathered. The merchant forced a smile, turned to the city lord, and asked what brought him here. Liu Feng, in turn, asked him if he was the one who increased food prices by 30%. And he said that this huckster was arrogant and that it was a monopoly speculation. And another thing, if he put them in this position, B must really want to get the 5th point. Liu Feng swung his leg out to kick him and kicked him in the stomach with all his might. But nothing happened. The merchant grinned, stroked his mustache, and didn't budge an inch. Liu Feng thought in embarrassment, so this is the power in the fat layer. Then the merchant began to say that he was selling grain, and other people were buying it. And if they don't like that the prices are too high, then they just have to buy it. He asked with a grin if there was any problem with that. Liu Feng became angry. He pulled Niu Ben's sword out of its scabbard and pointed it at the merchant. And he told the merchant that how dare he use grain as a means of profit. And he said that it seemed to him that the merchant did not think that he was the lord of this city. Then the merchant smiled nastily, pushed the sword away from him, and asked Liu Feng to calm down. And he said that according to the kingdom's law, grain merchants are free to set their own prices. He asked if it was possible that the lord intended to defy the law. Liu Feng turned to Old Man Bufu. He said that the merchant was right and that there really was such a law. The merchant put on an honest face and said that they, the grain merchants, honestly conduct their small business in accordance with the law. He wanted to ask Lord what he was doing. In his head, he thought that with Lord Omar's support, he wouldn't be afraid of a brat like Liu Feng. Liu Feng also thought, what the hell, who would have thought that this merchant would cause him so much trouble? And it looks like he won't be able to handle it today. In fact, he calmly told him that it looked like they weren't going to lower their price. Since that's the case, when the time comes, he'd better not regret it. The seller laughed and said that let them be sure, when they set the price, they will certainly regret it. When Liu Feng, Old Man Bufu, and Knight Niu Ben walked away from this vendor, he also shouted to them to be careful on the road. Liu Feng angrily said that he should just wait and see. People on the streets were outraged, asking what they should do now. It was also said that the price of grain had risen again to 10 copper coins per kilogram, and the price of processed wheat has risen to 14 copper coins per kilogram. And they were outraged about who in general can afford such a thing. Other people were supportive and said that if this continued, they would starve to death before the autumn harvest. And someone just swore and said that these unscrupulous grain merchants always raise prices at this time of year. Old Man Bufu walked past the indignant crowd to the bulletin board. He had a piece of parchment in his hand, which he hung on the bulletin board. People immediately became interested in what was hung there. The announcement read, Haiyang City will be rebuilt. A home renovation company. Recruitment of a large number of people. Stonemasons, masons, movers. Salary, 500 grams of wheat per day. For people responsible for construction, as well as literate people, working hours are increased by 20%. A strange guy asked Old Man Bufu, everything written there is true, and asked that the city lord really needs so many workers. The old man coughed into his fist and said that everyone should be sure that it was all true, and that if any of them are interested in any of these jobs, they can start right away after they apply at the city lord's mansion. The people began to rejoice. They said that they believed Mr. Bufu and that that was why they would go. The old man was given a plan for the construction of buildings. People sawed planks, dragged sand, and made cement. In general, the construction work went on as usual. After a while, the guy next to Old Man Bafu shouted for everyone to line up for their food. People thought that there was really food and it was all very wonderful. At night, 3 clerks gathered at a table in a food store, one of them the fat and unpleasant one. One of them said that, alas, no one had bought anything in the last few days. Another told him that fuck them all and that they should just die. That nasty peddler was biting off a leg of meat and told them to hold back their pathetic little thoughts, and also said that they overestimated this boy. One said that this Liu Feng was giving out food for free and asked how they would sell their grain then. The fat salesman held up 3 fingers and said 3 days. The city lord's grain reserves will last no more than 3 days. Another seller asked just 3 days, and he asked how many other ways this child could think of to stop them. The fat, obnoxious salesman asked if it was a nuisance and said they had nothing to worry about. When the time comes, they can all make a ton of money in one fell swoop. The other vendors laughed and said he was right. Liu Feng sat at his desk with a serious face and tried to draw a city plan. He was distracted by Nicole addressing him as the master of the city. Liu Feng turned his head in her direction and asked what was the matter. Nicole, a little embarrassed, began to say that it was a good thing that he was rebuilding all the houses and even gave the workers grain for it, however. Liu Feng immediately asked, however, what? And the girl began to say that the stocks of their storerooms will not last long. The people continued to work hard, build and receive a large amount of grain for this, but people at the distribution began to ask why there is so little grain today. The guy who was helping Bafu turned to him and informed him that the grain had run out. Old Man Bafu told him that he had already informed the Lord about it. He's already trying to do something. Liu Feng was standing on the balcony of his castle. Nicole came to him, addressed him as a young master, and told him that there was no more grain in their storerooms, and she doesn't think it will be delivered any time soon. Liu Feng smiled at her and told her not to worry, he would find a way. The people at the giveaway were getting angry. They asked why they don't give out grain. They said it took so long and they were starving to death. The fat salesman and other salesmen were gathered near the queue, and the fat salesman laughed maliciously and asked what they had here. He asked if the lord of the city didn't want to pay the bills. He turned to Old Man Bafu and told him to hurry up and distribute the food. I asked him why he had stopped. He pointed to the people and said that they were all hungry while waiting. Old Man Bafu started to say what, but the obnoxious merchant interrupted him and asked if they really had run out of provisions. People heard this and started to get angry. Someone started shouting that their child was waiting for him to bring food, and someone angrily resent. Old Man Bafu started shouting for everyone to calm down and just wait a little longer, and then the food would be distributed to them soon. The nasty salesman pretended to ask that of course this is so, and he asked the Old Man Bafu that he had really run out of grain, and whether the city lord has encountered any difficulties, and maybe they need help. The other vendors began to agree and say that how could the city lord be in trouble? Even if he didn't have any food left, he could just buy a supply of grain. Why do they even need help? And they said that it would be better for Liu Feng to distribute food quickly. He shouldn't leave people without food after a whole day of hard work, and especially when children and the elderly are waiting for them at home. People heard all this perfectly well and began to talk. So they got angry and outraged voices started shouting from the crowd. Someone shouted that at this rate he would starve to death. Someone asked when the hell Liu Feng would be coming, and he said it was almost dark. And someone was fiercely demanding that they be given their grain. Just as angry and hungry people began to shout that a whole day of hard work, and they still did not distribute grain. And they shouted that they had been deceived again. Old Man Bafu understood the whole problem of the situation and was beginning to worry. He poked one guy with a stick and asked him what the hell he was doing. Does he want to riot? This guy's friends saw this and started shouting angrily that this old fool dared to go against them. The crowd began to gather around the old man and the guy who was helping distribute the grain. People said that Old Man Bafu made them work, but he didn't give them any food. This is a big hoax. And they said we should kill him Kill that lousy dog. Old man Bafu was fighting off people, asking them how they could be so ungrateful. I asked them if they'd forgotten who really helped them. But the crowd didn't listen to the old man. They started beating him and the guy who was helping them. But then there was a loud shout that said enough was enough. It was Li Feng with Ming. Li Feng addressed the crowd and asked what the hell they were doing here. People calmed down a little after seeing the city lord here, and Li Feng repeated his question, asking what the hell was going on here. And he said that those who would cause trouble again should not come to work tomorrow. The crowd was taken aback and frightened by this, so the crowd immediately fell silent and retreated from the old man and the guy. The boy turned to Ba Fu's grandfather and asked him if he was okay. The old man just said he was a lord, just in time. The obnoxious merchant asked Liu Feng when he would distribute the grain already, and said that people already want to go home and have dinner. Liu Feng gave him an unpleasant look and addressed the crowd, saying that the grain would definitely be distributed. I asked them to wait a little longer. One of the vendors said what Liu Feng is waiting for, and he said that all the people were already hungry and couldn't wait any longer. A fat and obnoxious salesman took out a white handkerchief from somewhere and said that this was it. He pretended to wipe away his tears as he continued to say that he was asking Liu Feng to take a look at these people. After a day of hard work, the kids are waiting for them with food at home. And he said that even if he is indifferent to adults, he should not forget about children. And loudly, so that all people could hear him, he announced that today, for the sake of saving the children, he was ready to risk everything. He told Li Feng that they should just send someone to their warehouse to pick up the grain, and that there is enough grain for everyone. People, hanging their ears, believed this seller and began to say that he was so sincere about it. Li Feng thought to himself, so that's what he needed. When Li Feng went out to buy grain, this seller had set him an extremely high price, which then Li Feng had no choice but to suffer in silence. Li Feng walked towards that fat and obnoxious salesman. Walking up close to him, he asked him what he really thought people could afford his food. The shop assistant called him Mister and said that he had already told him that everyone was swallowing. I asked him how he could still think about money, and he said that his grain is a little expensive, only 20 copper coins per kilogram, but it is already a difficult task for any person to make such a long and difficult journey to stock up on supplies. He began to wipe away his tears again and plaintively asked if money was a problem for him. He'd also asked that Liu Fei wouldn't wait until people had nothing to eat. The crowd heard all of his speeches and began to actively support him. They said it was true, it was a little expensive, but they worked all day, and so did the people who were waiting for them at home. Others said their children hadn't eaten much in the last few days. They went to the Lord and asked him to do something about it. Mina looked at Liu Feng and thought that he didn't seem like he was going to do anything. The sunset turned the sky pink and orange. Chong asked the city lord if they were going to distribute grain or not. The crowd that had gathered around them froze in anticipation, and Li Feng felt a lot of annoyed stares at him. The crowd was getting impatient, nervous, and angry, and he could feel it. The merchant only added fuel to the fire. He quipped that it looked like it was time for everyone to leave. After all, their lord doesn't want to buy any grain for them. He doesn't care that they worked so hard for him. And he doesn't care if the relatives waiting for them at home are still alive, whether they are children or the elderly. The crowd believed these words and became enraged. People shouted that they should get the food they earned today. They were waving their fists and threatening to break into the castle and eat up all the lord's supplies if he didn't hurry to deliver the grain. Liu Feng looked startled as the crowd was about to head towards the castle. Nervous sweat trickled down his forehead. The fat man noticed it. With a triumphant smile, he gloated that after looking at the power of the elders, this brat was unlikely to be as sincere and kind in the future. Chuang and his men began to laugh loudly at the confusion they saw on the young master's face. They believed that they had defeated him. But suddenly, some of the people in the crowd started to stop. One of the peasants pointed ahead, drawing everyone's attention. At the city gate, Nuda first appeared. He was riding a horse, and he looked very tired. Behind him was his father, and New Ben's horse was harnessed to a cart. That, in turn, was filled to the brim with sacks of grain. Bringing up the rear of the procession was a similarly sweaty Nuar. The faces of the townspeople and Li Feng shone with joy. The red-haired fat man took a step back in shock. Ben stopped the cart next to Feng and gave a loud report, so it was heard by everyone who was standing in the square right now. He and his sons completed the task that the young master had set for them, and the grain arrived. Thanks to the foresight of the young lord, who allowed them to leave the city a few days ago, they were able to buy grain. And it was bought as much as he ordered. Chong's jaw dropped in disbelief. He'd been tricked again. Liu Feng thought of buying grain from a nearby city. How could he? Liu Feng stopped paying attention to the red-haired schemer and asked Bofu to pass on his order. It's time to start distributing grain. The crowd erupted in cheers. They lifted their young lord in their arms, rocked, tossed, and wished for long life. After all, they were a little hasty with their conclusions. One of Chuang's assistants asked what they would do now. He growled weakly. How did that brat get to him? We'll have to lie low and wait for an opportunity. The distribution was completed a little later than usual, but the workers returned home again that day with food for their families. In the early morning, before even the sun had risen, young Lord Liu Feng was sleeping soundly in his bed. But suddenly, the door to his bedroom creaked. Someone stealthily approached the young master's bedside. An ominous shadow fell over his face, but it was just Nicole. She brought Feng's breakfast, but she couldn't resist admiring it. Nicole thought he was the most beautiful man in the world, and she couldn't stop looking at him now either. She couldn't understand how little brother Li Feng's sleeping face could be so beautiful. After looking around and making sure that there was no one else in the room, Nicole leaned over the sleeping Feng to give him a secret kiss at least once. It wasn't a big deal, was it? Suddenly, a grumpy voice sounded very close by, asking what was she doing. Nicole jumped out of the way and saw Mina standing next to her. Ketchero crossed her arms and looked accusingly at the human girl. Nicole blushed, but since the best defense was to attack, she mimicked Mina's gesture and asked in displeasure why Mina was walking around without making a sound. Only her cheeks, flushed with embarrassment, gave her away. Mina reminded that she is not only a representative of the cat tribe, but also a warrior. The girls' voices woke Li Feng up. He sat up in bed and yawned widely, stretching until his back cracked. When he saw the two of them, he asked what was going on. Nicole didn't immediately know what to say, but she remembered just in time that she hadn't come empty-handed. She grabbed a tray of fresh, rosy buns and a glass of milk from the table, saying that she had just brought little brother Liu Feng breakfast. Our hero took a glass from the tray and noticed that the girl had a hard day, and she did not need to take on another responsibility. Mina grabbed one of the buns from the tray and announced with her mouth full that the so-called training camp was over. Liu Feng rejoiced at the good news. Mina was indeed his talisman, to which the cat girl said that everyone was waiting for him, and he should hurry up. Then she went out, finishing her bun as she went. Nicole thought sadly that she didn't understand why little brother Liu Feng was protecting Mina, since Mina was treating him very badly. While she was thinking, our hero managed to change his clothes. He said that he would be back for dinner and really wanted to eat her stewed pork. Nicole smiled sheepishly and said that she would be happy to make it. A huge crowd had gathered outside Xi Yang City's training camp. They were the toughest guys in town. The crowd was discussing whether they were really going to get free food, but most people were sure that Lord Liu Feng always kept his word. On the wall outside the camp was the city lord himself, Mina, and Knight Yuben. The latter was wearing a military camouflage uniform that Liu Feng had obtained in his home world. He reported that the people standing at the bottom were selected strictly according to his requirements. Liu Feng praised his manager for the work done. Then he began his speech to the crowd by addressing them as future soldiers. The reason they didn't pass the last test is because they weren't getting enough nutrition and weren't prepared. Thus, the city lord is here to offer them free grain, provided that they all train hard with Knight Yuben. They will be given a second chance to become soldiers next month. If they pass the exam this time, not only will they be given food, but the soldier's entire family will also be exempt from taxes. Liu Feng's promise was as generous as possible. The people, unaccustomed to such noble rulers, could not contain their joy. They began chanting long life wishes to their lord. There were calls not to wait, but to start training as soon as possible. Our hero agreed with them, and New Ben blew his whistle behind him. Which Feng also bought in an ordinary supermarket near his home in the modern world. Ben went down to the crowd and introduced his sons as trainers to the future soldiers. Li Feng had also obtained camouflage uniforms for all of them. The crowd was divided into groups, but it was more on the principle of who was closer to whom. Thus, the burden was divided equally between the new brothers. Ben announced the start of training. However, something went wrong from the very beginning. The peasants were not even ready for simple training. One set fire to his pants while trying to jump over an obstacle in the form of a burning crossbar. Another discovered a fear of heights while trying to climb the rope and threw a tantrum before he was halfway up the rope. And someone was able to get to the top of the wall only by stepping on the head of a comrade climbing after them. This caused a lot of guys to start slowing down their training, arguing about who would go next, and trying to avoid going to the training ground in every possible way. New Ben's face, looking down at the mess from the wall, was getting darker by the minute. Li Feng patted his knight on the shoulder and noticed that he was clearly facing a rather difficult task. This made Uncle New angry. He leaned over the wall and barked at the loafers to run to the firing range. Those who do not finish today's training will lose their lunch. This forced the farmers to run more actively and return to training. Mina laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. But suddenly, she thought of the guys she had traveled with before. She also had a lot of fun when she trained with Henry and the others. She wondered how they were doing. At this time, somewhere south of Yang City, a bonfire was burning in the depths of the cave. In this place, a motley tribe of beastmen were hiding, moving south in the hope of escaping the coming frost and evil humans. A boy with horns named Fuji stood in front of the blonde fox girl, clenching his fists. He reminded her that second big sister Minna still hadn't returned. It's been more than 7 days. Anri asked irritably, what does he want her to do? That fool Mina has to take care of herself. Or is he saying that they should also fall into the hands of humans? Her two fox tails flicked back and forth in exasperation. Fuji exclaimed that big sister should do something. Henry replied in a dissatisfied voice that their priority task was to immediately head south and find more food. Otherwise, they will all starve to death. A whole camp of hungry beastmen was set up in the cave. Small children screamed with hunger, and their mothers could not calm them down. Some even lay on the straw without strength, because they did not eat for several days in a row. But Fuji said he couldn't go south without his second older sister. Two of his friends, Bear Man and Pig Heel Guy, supported him. They couldn't drop the mine. The boy called to go kill those people and save the second big sister. They all trooped out of the cave. Henry loudly demanded that they stop and come back quickly. Her ears pricked up in anger. Henry loudly told her stupid brothers to stop and come back quickly. But her friends ran out of the cave, clearly not listening to her. The fox girl leaped high, did a somersault over the heads of her friends, and landed on 1 foot right at the cave's exit. But she lost her balance and fell face first into the stone floor with a shameful squeal. Her friends were confused and thought that she shouldn't try to do such fast movements if she didn't know them well enough. Henry got to her feet, dusted herself off, and continued her speech as if nothing had happened. She asked where her friends had lost their brains. Where were they going to get her back from? They had no idea where Minna was. Fuji asked what they should do then. The fox sighed and replied that first of all it was necessary to go to the nearest town in search of any traces. Henry thought Mina was a fool. She was supposed to be a shadow warrior, but they will definitely come for her. The next day, the horned boy set off towards the nearest town. Henry wrapped a handkerchief around his head to cover the horns. Fuji thought that his older sister was a bit strange. She insisted that she didn't want to save Mina, but she obviously already had those handkerchiefs ready. The boy came to Yang City and was surprised to find that the city was being rebuilt in full swing. Some houses were dismantled, and in their place others were built, new and more durable. He was just wondering what was going on when the smell of delicious food hit his nostrils. When he came to the smell, he saw a whole pot of hot tomato stew. The smell was so delicious that his stomach rumbled loudly. The pink-haired girl who was preparing rations for the workers noticed him. When she saw that a hungry boy had come to the cauldron, she offered him something to eat. And if he went to work for Lord Liu Feng afterward, he would be able to take more food with him in the evening. Fuji thought of his hungry clansmen in the cave, the screams of toddlers, the moans of exhausted adults, and he demanded to sign him up for a job. All day the boy actively helped at the construction site. I ran around with a cart, carried building materials, and helped pack them. The rest of the workers couldn't understand why the kid had so much physical strength, but when evening came, Fuji received a reward for his hard work, a bag of grain. But the poor thing had forgotten all about himself. He only had enough energy to enjoy the food. He was shaking all over with fatigue and hunger, so he lost his footing and fell as soon as he moved slightly away from the crew. Before he lost consciousness, Fuji noticed that the same girl was running towards him. The fading mind only had time to think that all humans were dangerous, but the next moment he sat up in bed with a jerk. Looking around, he realized that he was in an unfamiliar and obviously human room. He saw his bag of grain and handkerchief lying on the table beside him. The boy clutched at the horns. The handkerchief really wasn't on his head. This means that it was discovered. The pink-haired girl who had invited him to work came into the room. She brought him a whole bowl of rice porridge and offered him more food. After all, it was from hunger that the poor thing lost consciousness. Fuji jumped to his feet on the bed and pressed himself into the corner. He demanded to know what she was up to. The girl only replied that her name was Linara and gave a friendly smile. The boy demanded that she not come. He was a beastman, and if she made him angry, then he ran the edge of his hand over his neck. The girl raised an eyebrow. He repeated the gesture a few more times, but it didn't seem to be understood. Linara just laughed and asked, "Are all beastmen so playful?" Fuji froze and asked in confusion, "Isn't she afraid of the beastmen? And in what sense are they playful?" The girl replied with a warm smile that of course she wasn't afraid. Also, Lord Liu Feng has a catchroll walking around with him, and it doesn't look so bad either. It dawned on the boy that this might be the second older sister. Fuji jumped off the bed and grabbed the stunned rescuer by the arm. He eagerly asked me to tell him what the catchroll looked like. Linara replied that she had long dark purple hair, eyes like grapes, and was very beautiful. This description accurately described the mine. The boy had to come back and tell them about it. Only then did he notice that he was holding Linara's hand. He abruptly released her hand and jumped out of the way. The boy wasn't supposed to trust people. Embarrassed, he realized that the pink-haired girl really wasn't afraid of him at all. To hide his embarrassment, he quickly grabbed a bag of grain from the table, his handkerchief, and rushed out of the house, right through the wall. Linara stared dumbfounded at the hole in the wall of her house, and thought that if he wanted to leave, he could just climb out the window. Why was it necessary to run to the breach through the wall? When Henry found out where Fuji was staying so long, she immediately scolded him. How could it work the same way that pitiful people do? She asked angrily, why didn't he just show his horns and say that he was a beastman? People would just run away quickly. Fuji quickly changed the subject and said that he knew where Mana was. The fox immediately started shaking the boy, demanding to know where he found it. Fuji had to beg his older sister to stop. When Henry released him, he fell to the stone floor on his back. After taking a deep breath, Fuji replied that the mine was caught by Liu Feng, the lord of Haxiyang City. The fox reported that he remembered these words. Under the cover of night, the Beastman rescue party headed towards the lord's castle. With short leaps, they leaped from one thatched roof to another, closing in on their target. They expected that there would be a lot of guards around. Henry, having assessed the situation, ordered them to proceed according to their basic plan. Almost all of the warriors had just started their training, which meant they were easy prey. It was very easy to knock out the guards. Even the short Fuji and his friend with the pig's heel could handle it, not to mention Fat Bear. When her friends knocked out all the guards, Mina praised them, and her face was full of ill-concealed triumph. Fuji looked at her pointedly. The fox snorted and turned away. I just added that when they're done here, we need to train more. As Fuji watched his older sister make it to the castle's balcony in a few jumps, He thought that Anri was very happy with all this, but didn't want to admit it. Liu Feng was sitting quietly on the sofa in his chambers at this time. He was reading the manhwa he had learned from his homeworld and drinking tea with Nicole's red bean pie. Manhwa was so stupid that he couldn't stop laughing. Looking forward to a delicious snack, he picked up one cube of the sweet treat from his plate and brought it to his mouth. But he froze, holding a piece of pie in front of his open mouth. There was a loud crack. The wall of his bedroom was unceremoniously breached, and two unfamiliar beastmen flew in. However, Henry flew right over his sofa, which extremely attracted the attention of the young lord. Fuji held up a knife and demanded that their older sister be returned to them. Only now it turned out that they were addressing an empty space. Liu Feng was behind them. The man asked in confusion who they were. To cover up the awkward situation, Fuji lunged at Feng to kill him right away, repeating his demand, but his knife clattered into the corner of the room. It was Mina who deflected the attack that was aimed at Lord Liu Feng. In the next second, the cat and the horned boy recognized each other. When their eyes met, they were confused. Fuji shouted that he would kill the despicable little man who dared to kidnap their older sister. Mina stopped him, telling him that they had misunderstood. She lives at his house to recover from her injuries. Liu Feng looked at the destruction and thought with displeasure, how can you kill people left and right? When Henry heard that her little sister was injured, she rushed to her side, hugging her tightly. She asked if she was all right and if she was in pain. Mina smiled softly at Chanterelle, patted her head, and told her that she was feeling better and didn't need to worry. The cat asked Henry if she didn't say that she shouldn't worry about her. Why didn't they go south? The confused vixen replied that she was worried about her. Fuji and the other fools were determined to save Mina. While Fuji was getting away from being called a fool, which hit him like a heavy frying pan, Liu Feng was looking at Anri with delight. A real tsundere loli fox girl. He was shocked. When everyone calmed down a bit, Feng invited Mina's friends to sit down. Henry asked suspiciously if the bastard had harmed their older sister. Mina said no. How could he do something like that? The young lord felt slightly annoyed by such accusations. Lisa grabbed Mina's hand and told them to hurry. Everyone is just waiting for her to go south. The cat gave Liu Feng a strange look and turned its back on him, taking a step towards the hole. But our hero asked her to stop. Liu Feng tried to stop Mina. Henry turned to him and asked him what he wanted. He replied that Mina had not yet fully recovered. Maybe they should stay here for a couple more days. There was hope in his eyes. Mina looked away and told him that he didn't need to worry about her. But our hero noticed that he wasn't finished yet. Everyone in the kingdom catches beastmen. Even if they go south, they might be in danger. Mina looked at his face and remembered all the good things he'd done for her. He fed her, washed her, helped her get rid of her wounds, gave her new clothes, and did his best to take good care of her. Sighing, Mina said that it would be up to Henry to decide. But their heartwarming conversation was interrupted by the sound of a rumbling stomach. The source was the belly of Fuji, who had not been able to eat all day. Liu Feng saw this as his chance. He prepared a whole pot of rice with tomatoes and eggs for the beastmen. They began to eat with gusto. Henry, having put only one spoonful of the treat in her mouth, fell into ecstasy. It seemed to her that she was a little fox cub running through the tomato fields after a flying egg. When the meal was over, Henry stroked her stomach, feeling full. She hadn't eaten such a delicious meal in a very long time. But then she shook her head, coming to her senses. Vixen couldn't believe that this man was so dangerous. He was cooking too well. Li Feng stepped out onto the balcony. Mina stood there alone, looking out over the sleeping city. Our hero jokingly asked her if she was not afraid that he would poison her friends. Mina turned to him and asked if he would have dared to do something like that. Feng replied that he certainly wouldn't do that. He asked the cat if it really decided to head south, and the cat replied that they had no choice. The wrath of the goddess of snow and ice was approaching. They won't survive without food. Liu Feng noticed that the south was so far away. Even though there are only a few cities along the way, do they even know how things are going there? What if someone tries to catch them again? Why don't the beastmen just stay in Xaiyan City, where they'll be safe? Mina gave him a confused look and asked what they would eat if they stayed. Was he going to feed them every day? Sensing that he had a chance, Li Feng replied that they could work for him. While there is work, there will be food. Mina was surprised. She clarified whether he meant working together with farmers. He nodded but pointed out that if there were any special skills, you could find something else to do. The cat paused, then asked why he was being so kind to them. Our hero replied that he simply did not want to part with it. Mina's blush deepened. Liu Feng knew that the beastmen didn't trust ordinary people very much, and were worried that they would deceive them. But they'd been together for a while, and Mina knew what kind of person he was. So, why not stay? Mina didn't say anything, but turned away and went into the house. Liu Feng thought that he just didn't offer enough, but in reality, the kitty just didn't want to show him her embarrassment. Henry had received a beautiful pink pajama set from Liu Feng, and now she was showing it off in front of Mina. The clothes were very comfortable and much better than the clothes of the nobles. Mina took a sip of tea from her mug and said she was just lucky. They were the smallest clothes in town. Chanterelle pressed her hands to her chest and looked at her friend. Of course, she needed a lot more clothes. In a fit of envy, she threw herself at the cat. I started tickling her. Liu Feng, who was listening to the commotion behind the wall, was happy. Until he remembered that the beastmen would leave tomorrow. When the girls had calmed down and gone to bed, Mina suddenly asked Henry if they had to go south. Henry sat up in bed and looked into her older sister's eyes. Did she not want to leave because of that man? Mina looked away from her face and said that they really didn't know anything about the South. Can they survive there? Vixen asked in displeasure, did she really believe that person's words? Mina swung her legs off the bed and said no, of course not. But what he said made sense. Mina went to the window and continued talking. They do not know what dangers await them in the South and whether they will be able to survive there. They can all stay here. And even if there's trouble, they can handle it. Henry considered her words. In the morning, the rest of the beastmen saw their big sister in a very cute dress and found that she looked like a cute little princess. The traditional style was well combined with open shoulders, and the turquoise color was very suitable for the Chanterelle girl. However, they were outraged. Why did she have new clothes, and they did not? Henry replied that she could offer to wear one of her new dresses, but they declined in embarrassment. At this time, Li Feng appeared in the hall. He was so upset that he was going to have to say goodbye to his new friends that he looked like a corpse coming to life. Feng offered to accompany them, but the beastmen stopped him. Henry directly asked Master Liu Feng what kind of work he could offer them. Our hero froze, looking at them with big eyes. It took him a moment to grasp the meaning of the question. But when it did, a happy smile lit up her face. He asked if they really decided to stay. Mina replied that so far, yes, but if they found out that he was up to something bad, they would tear him to shreds. A happy Liu Feng assured them that they didn't have to worry about it. That evening, Mina and Henry heard Feng singing in the bathroom. Vixen asked what it was. Mina said she didn't know, but maybe he was crazy. Henry could only sympathize with the poor fellow. But in reality, Li Feng was very happy to be able to touch their ears. At dinner, Henry tried to tickle Mina. While the girl was laughing and begging her to stop, Li Feng was glued to their games and stopped paying attention to what he was eating. And Nicole, who was sitting next to her, couldn't take her eyes off Li Feng's little brother and thought how beautiful he was. But then our hero glanced at his watch. It was almost 7 o'clock. Li Feng feigned a wide yawn and said that he wanted to sleep. Nicole noticed that the master always went to bed around midnight. What's wrong with him today? In response, he stretched and said that maybe this time he worked longer than usual. With a big yawn again, Li Feng got to his feet and went to the bedroom, saying that he needed to get some sleep. He paused in the doorway and added that if anything happened, he should wait until tomorrow. Nicole promised that she would ask the others not to disturb him. Mina, on the other hand, pricked up her ears and thought that Liu Feng was a bit strange today. After locking the door to his chambers, Li Feng opened a passage to his home world. It was time for him to go back and buy a few things. For example, he needed more of a soldier's uniform. Our hero had the ability to move through space and time. He could only do this once a day, but it was very draining for his body. But it also allowed him to see the future and potential risks. After falling through the portal clumsily, Li Feng hit his head painfully on the headboard. How many times he moved around, but he still didn't figure out how to control his landing. Thankfully, no one had seen his shameful fall, and Mina would have laughed at him for sure. But it wasn't just one fall. As soon as Feng got out of bed, he tripped over a copy of Manhwa that was lying on the floor and fell down again. Without Nicole, he didn't know how to keep the house tidy at all. Finally, our hero got to the computer to do some shopping. He was going to teach these horse thieves a lesson. They will definitely beat them. His order did not consist only of military uniforms. He also needed several hundred iron spears and longbows. The seller was even surprised by this order. Li Feng explained that they were going to make a movie about the war in another world. Money doesn't matter. The director of the film said that he wants everything to be real, so they need authentic things. The seller replied that it would probably be a hit. He promised to poison the goods as soon as possible. And I asked for an autograph from the actress of that evil cutie. He liked her very much. Li Feng then promised that if the goods were genuine, he would send him an autograph. After finishing the dialogue, Feng got to his feet and thought that with the Watchers, he should be more than a city lord. Next, he had to go to the supermarket to buy something. He started for the door, then remembered that his outfit wasn't the best for shopping right now. He came to the store in his usual clothes. A t-shirt, jeans, and a cap that successfully covered his face. He collected purchases from a list to provide all the inhabitants of his castle with the necessary things. Other shoppers noticed how much the young man in the cap was buying. He looked like some kind of CEO, even if he was just shopping. As much as Li Feng wanted to not stand out, he couldn't do it. There were so many purchases that I had to ask the store staff for help. Toothbrushes, shampoos, wipes, all this was very necessary for him. The cashier stared in horror at the pile of boxes being unloaded in front of her. Li Feng even peeked out from behind them to apologize for the inconvenience, but the cashier recognized him. Our hero did not deny that he is the same Li Feng. The cashier looked around and whispered to him that she was crazy about his time travel novel. She followed every chapter of it. She asked him why he hadn't published anything for months. The cashier even swore that she wouldn't tell anyone. Li Feng tried to explain that he was very busy lately. But the girl immediately blurted out to him that a few days ago, his neighbor told him that he had not left the house for a long time. She knew he needed to be home writing, getting ready for his big hit. Of course, she was sure it was true. Our hero thought gloomily that it seemed time for him to move to another place, but he didn't show it, just noticed how much she knew about him. The cashier giggled in response, still not sure what conclusion she pushed him to. She finally started to run through her purchases, while Li Feng checked his list. At this time, Minna couldn't find a place in the other world. She had a feeling that Master Li Feng wasn't all right. She went to his bedroom and tried to enter, but the door was locked. Li Feng returned home after dark. He put the boxes on the bed and changed back into his armor. Then I opened the interspatial dimension. It was a kind of vacuum that only Li Feng could use and see. This is an unlimited space that did not depend on time. Things placed in this dimension remained in the same state they were placed in. Using the power of his fingers, Feng began to transfer the boxes to his spatial pocket. This superpower of his appeared after he received an electric shock. Our hero used the electric current in his palms to store and move things. During this process, Feng could freely control this space, and it was invisible to everyone else. When the last box was in place, Li Feng closed the portal and was about to return when he remembered the bag of burgers left on the table from the nearest fast food store. He bought them especially for his girls, and he hoped they'd like it. Mina had been pacing the corridor outside the city lord's chambers. Not even Li Feng's breathing could be heard from the other side of the door, and the cat still had very sharp ears. She knocked on the door. No reaction. Mina wondered if Li Feng was hiding. Or it's not even here at all. The cat girl narrowed her eyes, deciding to take out the door. At this very moment, a portal opened in the young lord's bedroom, and our hero returned. His bedroom as a place to move was the best option. Or so he thought, until Mina kicked the door open with a powerful kick. Entering the room directly on the fallen door, the cat did not see anyone. She asked aloud where Liu Feng might have been. She was told from under the door that she was standing on it. Mina jumped out of the way. To calm the kitty down, Liu Feng simply gave her a bag of treats. While eating burgers, Mina explained that she had been knocking on the door for a very long time, that she thought he had been killed. Or something like that. Liu Feng asked with a smile, did she kick down the door because she was worried about him? Mina blushed slightly and turned away. She said she just came to thank him for giving them the job. Our hero noticed that she was very strangely thanking people, pointing her finger at the lying door. While Mina was trying to get over her embarrassment, he asked her how she was going to thank him. Suddenly, he looked straight into her great colored eyes and asked if she would marry him. Not expecting such an offer, the cat girl choked on it. While she was trying to clear her throat, Li Feng reported that he was just joking and rushed to pour the poor girl a glass of water. But when he offered her a drink, Mina awkwardly pushed the glass with her fingers. It rolled over, and the water spilled all over her chest. They both stared at it for a moment, confused, after which they both started to panic. The two of them ran for a towel at the same time, causing them to collide, and the wet chest bumped right into Li Feng's face. He staggered back, tripped over the leg of the sofa, and fell to the floor. While trying to grab onto something, he accidentally grabbed Mina's tail. It certainly kept him on his feet, but the sound the cat girl made them both freeze in shock. Angered, Mina yanked the tail out of his fingers and slapped Li Feng's face with all her might. She waved her tail nervously, then turned around and demanded that he not tell anyone about her tail. She stormed out of the room. Li Feng remembered that in the animal world, it was said that the tail of cats is the most sensitive place, so he was flirting with her. At sunset, two dark-cloaked horsemen approached Xi Yang City. Their faces were covered by hoods. The peasants, who were picking up grain after the working day, did not pay attention to them, and that was a big mistake. Two of the workers were delayed at the construction site, and they returned home when it was already dark. They discussed the generosity of the city lord and how much this payment helps out their families. But then they saw a rider in the distance. They quickened their pace, hoping to get around the stranger, but he blocked their path. They couldn't even see his eyes, so they were even more afraid. Suddenly, a horseman snatched a sack of grain from the hands of a nearby peasant, but he grabbed it, not allowing it to be taken away. The worker shouted that he couldn't take his food. He'd worked all day for her. If she was taken away, what would his family eat? But the rider reared his horse. The sack stretched and tore, scattering the grain on the ground, after which the rider simply walked on. Enraged by this, the peasant ran after the rider, accusing him of spoiling the food. But as soon as the poor man touched his boot, the rider, without much ceremony, cut him down with his sword. The other man froze in horror as he watched. He was so scared that he couldn't move. And when he came to his senses to call for help, someone clamped his mouth from behind and slashed at his throat. The second man in the raincoat threw the dead laborer to the ground, climbed onto his horse, and scolded the first for being an amateur. They also agreed not to kill anyone, so as not to attract attention to themselves. He explained that he just wanted to play with this stupid, dirty peasant, but he dared to get his shoes dirty. While they were talking, the riders disappeared into the darkness. Under the cover of night, merchants were having fun in the local tavern. Chuang and his band of thieving merchants. They drank wine and ate meat in the company of beautiful ladies, and those who just recently killed 2 innocent people drank with them. The tables were piled high with plates of skewered, greasy meat. The wine flowed freely, as if they hadn't just committed any crimes. In the morning, news of the dead workers spread throughout the city. No one could believe that their neighbors and comrades, with whom they had just spoken yesterday, had been killed. Many people began to say that it is better not to leave the house at night, because it is dangerous. A crowd formed around the place where the bodies were found, but the guards kept them away. The Lord was investigating what had happened. Liu Feng was furious. Apparently, those same horse thieves dared to kill its inhabitants in his own domain. He threatened to kill those behind it. Niu Ben, who was examining the bodies of the dead, noticed that it didn't look like horse thieves. In the first place, it wasn't the time for the autumn harvest yet, and everyone knew that Xi Yang City was very poor right now. Why would they come? Secondly, although there are differences between the wounds of both victims, in both cases they were clearly inflicted with sharp weapons. Horse thieves couldn't afford such weapons. And third, what was the most important thing? If they were horse thieves, why didn't they take the food? So saying, Ben showed the young master the scrap of sack and pointed with his finger to the grains scattered on the ground. Liu Feng stared at it in horror. Uncle Ben was right. During lunch, Liu Feng couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. Who could have killed those peasants and not taken the food? Then he looked at Mina, who was eating a sweet pie from Nicole's with a good appetite. Our hero said in a serious tone that he needed her help, but this mission is very dangerous, and he won't argue if she refuses. But the cat interrupted him and asked what she needed to do. And even without looking up from the food, Liu Feng stood up from the chair and squeezed the girl's shoulders. She even had to leave the food behind. He said she needed to go to a place at night and gather information, but it should not take any action. Mina only yawned in response and said that since it was going to be a night out, she needed to get some sleep. But Liu Feng stopped her. With an embarrassed cough, he said that he had prepared a comfortable suit for her mission and asked her to remember to put it on before leaving. In his mind's eye, he was already picturing Mina in this outfit, and he almost choked on his saliva. She definitely has to look very sexy in it. Mina, on the other hand, was clearly interested. When night fell, the cat girl appeared in Liu Feng's office wearing a tight black latex suit. It looked like both a spy outfit and one of Catwoman's costumes. Our hero turned bright red and almost bled out of his nose. Mina ignored him and noticed that the suit was a little tight, but she liked it. And it was perfect for a secret mission under the cover of night. After managing to control himself, Liu Feng handed her a strong and sharp throwing knife and said that it was for her protection. The cat snatched up the knife and threw it without looking at it into the closet behind her. She didn't need any protection, as she was a cat warrior. Feng clutched at his heart. Why did she put holes in such a nice closet? But Mina understood it in her own way. She pulled out the knife and said that if it made him feel better, she would take it. Although it was more likely that the knife had penetrated the door of the sturdy cabinet up to the hilt. While mourning the wardrobe, Liu Feng said that he was glad that she liked it. Under the cover of night, the cat girl went to the tavern. To the fat red-haired man who constantly raised the price of grain. She had to find out what they were up to. She climbed up to the roof, crawled through the attic to the meeting room, and crouched under the ceiling to listen to someone else's conversation. Chuang, the red-haired merchant, was walking along the table where his men and two cloaked strangers were sitting. He said that killing peasants in a normal situation would not be a serious offense. But if Liu Feng discovered that they were the assassins, then their plan would fail. One of the riders said that this way they would complete the plan even earlier than the required time. They just need to go and cut off Liu Feng's head. Mina chuckled to herself at how much courage these people had to get the Lord's head. The red-haired fat man's mustachioed assistant said that this would be the fastest solution to all problems. If they killed Liu Feng, Xi Yang City would be at their mercy. Then the second mate remembered that there was a cat girl walking beside the Lord, and she's sexy as hell. When they succeed, it will also belong to them. While the two of them giggled nastily, fantasizing about a bright future, the cat girl stood in the rafters near the ceiling, shaking with anger. What scum are gathered down there? She even drew her knife, intending to jump down from above and kill everyone. But then the fat man continued to say that so far this is only their idea. Anyway, Liu Feng is now a noble, but his mustachioed assistant noticed that there was nothing to be afraid of. Even if they killed him, Baron Omar would support them. After all, 70% of their profits go to Baron Omar every year. And now Liu Feng wants to ruin their business. This was unacceptable. One of the riders supported the mustachioed merchant. After all, Baron Omar had personally sent them and a friend to help the affected merchants. At the sound of Baron Omar's name, Mina froze, still not ready to unleash her punishment on the people below. The case took a completely different turn. Mina immediately returned to the castle to report what she had heard to Liu Feng. He listened to the report together with his knight Yu Ben. He immediately excitedly informed the master that Ho Luang Trong would not stop. Right now, he's plotting a murder. What a twisted mindset. Mina said she thought they should kill him right now, to avoid serious consequences in the future. After listening to them, Li Feng asked who Baron Omar was. Ben remembered that his master had come from another kingdom and explained. In the Anla kingdom, titles were classified into 5 types. Above all, of course, was the monarch. Then came the duke, marquis, count, viscount, and baron. Among the nobles, there is Count Puli, who controls over 200 very strong noble knights. And Omar is the last son of Count Puli. Li Feng understood what Niu Ben was talking about. And it seems that this baron is not someone they can compete with. They should have been careful. Our hero laid out a map of the city and its surroundings on the table. He was afraid that if they killed Ho Luang Trong, his men, and the sent warriors, Baron Omar would take this event as an excuse to start a war. Ben asked if there was any other way to deal with them. After a pause, Feng replied that they could only calm down and keep abreast of all the developments right now. The next morning, Nicole served a new dessert for breakfast that her little brother Li Feng had taught her. Dough rings covered with sweet icing. The girl managed to make the most real donuts. The beastmen really liked the donuts. They began to absorb them at an incredible speed. Li Feng asked the girls to eat more slowly, and he praised Nicole because the donuts were very tasty. As the cat and Chanterelle slowed down their meal, Nicole was overwhelmed by the praise. But breakfast was interrupted by shouting. A peasant burst into the dining room, followed by one of the new guards. He was shouting that another man had been killed. Li Feng got to his feet, slamming his hands on the table in a rage. The peasant immediately screamed that this was a profound disrespect to the Lord. Henry noticed that he was too serious. He should have sent someone to check on the situation. But Li Feng couldn't help but go in person. He couldn't let those scum wreak havoc in his city. He headed for the exit and asked Mena to call Niu Ben and then catch up with him. Henry muttered that people were too restless and went back to eating delicious donuts. Nicole wondered why Mina was the one who always went with the master when he left the castle. The peasant was leading the way to the scene of the alleged crime, but he was running too fast. Suspiciously fast, the Lord and his men fell several meters behind. But soon the peasant led our heroes to a dead end between old houses that did not have time to rebuild. The guide turned the corner of another house, and when Li Feng and his men followed, the man simply disappeared, as if he had vanished into thin air. Mina looked down at her feet. The cat's intuition rang loudly. Something was wrong here. Suddenly, the ground beneath our heroes' feet visibly shuddered and collapsed with a terrible crash. It turned out that there was a trap in this place. The pit was covered with some fragile broken boards. It was covered with an earth-colored cloth, sprinkled with earth for concealment. Li Feng, Niu Ben, and Mina all fell to the bottom. Ben landed on one knee, and Mina managed to stay on her feet. Only the young lord fell head first. It was very painful and insulting. At the edge of the pit, the cloaked horsemen appeared. They were openly mocking Li Feng. They thought he was very dangerous. He got caught so easily. Li Feng shouted that if they were the killers, then he would have killed them himself if he hadn't fallen into this pit. The assassins guffawed again. The one with the scar on his eye said that there was no point in continuing this conversation. It was necessary to call the others to bury Lord Loser and complete the task. What they didn't think was that there was a feline representative on Li Feng's side. Mina deftly got out of the pit in a few jumps and brought down powerful kicks on her opponents. One of them managed to grab a sword, but the girl knocked the weapon out of his hand with a single blow. The killers realized that this cat was much stronger than it looked. They weren't going to play with her. They whistled for their horses, jumped on them, and rode out of the city. But Mina wasn't going to let them go so easily. At this time, Li Feng managed to get out of the pit thanks to Niu Ben's help. He muttered that Mina was so cool that they would definitely have painful memories of her. Ben proudly remarked that the assassins were too weak to kill the young master. When Li Feng saw the enemies running away, his intuition chimed there was something wrong here. He shouted at Mina not to pursue the assassins, but Mina didn't hear him. Feng swore under his breath. He looked at Uncle Ben climbing out of the hole and said that Mina might get into trouble. They need to catch up with her. Ben asked how he could catch up with them without horses. Our hero looked around and saw an ostrich. He was standing quietly outside the nearest house, chewing grass. That's lucky, of course. Climbing on top of the bird, he steered it in the direction that the killers and Mina, who was chasing them, had taken. He shouted that Uncle New had brought help, and he would follow the cat. Then Sinki came out of the house. It was his bird, and he caught it to eat for dinner. But the bird was gone. Ben had to retreat as quickly as possible so as not to expose his lord. Mina chased the assassins all the way to the forest, jumping from branch to branch. Suddenly, her sensitive ears caught Liu Feng's voice calling her name. Turning around on another branch, she was surprised to see her friend riding an ostrich, trying to stop her. As soon as he shouted that there might be traps, the poor bird tripped over a rope stretched over the path. The bird sprawled on the ground, and the hike immediately died, and she sent her rider flying high. Mina had no choice but to jump down from the branch and catch Li Feng. Right on his hands, which really confused our hero. The cat girl asked worriedly if he was all right. Unable to take his eyes off the cleavage on her chest, he replied that everything was fine. A mocking voice greeted Liu Feng, and maliciously remarked that it was better for him to enjoy the moment. They didn't have much time left. Looking around, our heroes realized that they were surrounded by robed assassins on all sides. Startled, Liu Feng realized that they had made a fool of themselves by appearing here. There were too many of them. He could only try to stall for time before help arrived. He cautiously asked why these nice people wanted to kill him in the first place. They didn't have any conflicts. If he was going to be killed now, he wanted to know why, but no one listened to him. Liu Feng saw his own terrified face reflected in the reflection of the sword blade of the nearest warrior. Why is it not happening here as usual? The main character always lives longer, but before the bearded assassin could strike, he was knocked down and the sword was knocked out of his hands. With a few subtle movements, half of the encirclement collapsed to the ground. No one even had time to understand what had happened and where the many wounds had been inflicted from. Mina glared at the scared-eyed boy in annoyance as she held the knife Liu Feng had given her. And you didn't even break a sweat, you little devil. Cursing, the scarred man ordered everyone to rush into battle at once. Those who were still on their feet charged at the cat, swords drawn. The blades danced around the girl, and soon she was completely hidden behind the dust they raised. There was no way she could have saved herself. For a moment, the dust of the dancing blades disappeared from the mine, and the scored boy grinned contentedly. The cat had absolutely nowhere to go. But when the dance stopped, the cat girl was nowhere to be found. But in the next instant, a swirl of knife flew down on the assassins from above, scattering them like helpless kittens. Mina threw herself at the leader of this gang, but he managed to escape. She just slashed the knife across his cheek. From Moore's triumphant smile, it was clear that he considered this dodge to be his own doing. But the cat girl said that she was just unlucky to miss. There will be no second such case. Angry, the scarred man lunged at the cat with the sword, yelling at it to go to hell. Mina chuckled and walked away, saying that such a slow attack was unlikely to harm her. But the blade of the sword ripped open the sleeve of her dress. She slowly shifted her gaze from the hole to the person who made it. He took her look in his own way, asking her if she was surprised he was bothering her. But in fact, Mina was angry. This dress was given by her master. How could he tear it up? She swung the knife straight at the opponent with a loud growl, launching a fierce attack. Several hits hit the target, knocking the assassin to the ground. Liu Feng was absolutely delighted. Mina was so cool. A true warrior. He informed her that it was just amazing. Mina smiled sheepishly at the praise, but masked it with confidence as she straightened her hair. Of course, she was a true warrior, a great warrior of the cat tribe. While she was bragging about how easy it was to fight these people, one of the slain ones came to his senses. It was still the same guy with the scar on his eye. He grabbed his sword and charged at the cat girl from behind. She didn't even have time to look back, even though Feng noticed the attack and warned her. Without thinking of anything else, our hero covered the girl with himself. Liu Feng was hit hard on the back and fell on top of a landmine. She picked it up and screamed in panic. She thought that her master was finished, but he suddenly grabbed her hand and theatrically asked if there were any afterlife. After all, he is so ill, and he is dying. The guy with the scar in his eye didn't let Mina fully realize that this was a performance. He swung his sword again, intending to cut them both down with a single blow. But then he was pierced by a hail of arrows, and the assassin fell back to the ground, to never get up again. Fortunately for Feng and Mina, the city guards led by New Ben came to their rescue in time. Ben was the first to get off his horse and rushed to his friend's side to make sure they were all right. Liu Feng showed off his back. He managed to escape with a small cut and a rip in the fabric of his fancy clothes. In fact, the reason was that he was wearing a Kevlar bulletproof vest underneath his smart clothes. He brought it back from his own world. The weapons of this world lagged behind the modern ones, and even the best sword couldn't break through such armor. Otherwise, he would have died. Ben was glad of his luck, and he said that the army is already on the way, but it seems that it was no longer needed. Liu Feng asked in horror if Uncle Niu had brought the entire army after them. He confirmed it. These assassins dared to harm the lord of their city. They must kill them all, but Liu Feng didn't agree with him. He stated that the incident was sabotage. On his way back from the forest, when he saw the thick smoke above the city, Liu Feng gave an order to all his entourage to run there and quickly extinguish the raging fire. Liu Feng shouted that their supply depot was on fire. He shouted to New Ben to get his men to carry water quickly and start putting out the fire. New Ben immediately agreed, and his fighters set to work. Some residents advised to wet their clothes to avoid burns and to escape from the flames. Bufu shouted to Liu Feng that the flames were too big and advised him to go back and not put himself in mortal danger. But Liu Feng replied that he would stop talking and waste time and just put out the fire together. Auntie Mi called out to Liu Feng and informed him that they couldn't find Henry and Nicole. Liu Fei asked her what she said, then suggested that they might be inside a burning building. Aunt May only managed to shout at Liu Fei and Ming to be careful, but Mina, cursing and afraid of the fire, backed away from the burning building, unable to overcome her terror of the fire. She shouted at Liu Fei, who was running inside the burning building, to be careful. Nicole woke up and screamed in horror, realizing that everything around her was on fire. She screamed that she was very scared and tried to call Henry, telling her that they were on fire. Nicole's attempts to awaken Henry were successful after a few summons, and the young beastman woke up. Henry assessed the situation and asked the girl Nicole where they were. Nicole replied that it looked like they had been abducted and left here to die on purpose. Henry cursed and said that when she found out who dared to do this, she would skin him, no matter what it was. Nicole, coughing heavily, asked Henry if they were really going to be burned alive and not be able to get out. Henry, trying to keep her emotions in check, replied that they would not die and would definitely be saved. The rafters breaking from the fire made the girls close their eyes in fear, waiting for imminent death. Liu Feng burst inside the burning building and called out to Henry and Nicole, trying to find them in the smoke and flames. After making his way through the flaming boards and finding the girls, Liu Feng asked them if they were all right. Nicole replied that it couldn't be him, her little brother Liu Feng. Liu Feng wasted no time in talking and shouted to Henry and Nicole to quickly follow him. Henry had time to think at that moment that Liu Feng was a man with incredible courage, risking his life to save her and Nicole. Liu Feng was making his way forward, pointing out the way for Henry and Nicole to follow closely behind him. The girls only said that they were thanking the brave Liu Feng for his help. Outside the building, Niu Beng was commanding his men who were trying their best to put out the crazed flames. Niu Ben urged his men to quickly bring him water in buckets, which he immediately splashed on the fire. He told his men to continue and not stop putting out the flames even for a second. Niu Ben only had time to think about what he saw ahead of Nicole. As soon as one of his men shouted to the others to look ahead, and it seems to him that someone is coming out of the building. Beast Minming and the rest of the city's residents shouted in unison that it was the city Lord Liu Feng, along with the girls Nicole and Henry. Everyone was happy to welcome those rescued from the flames, thanking God that they had managed to get out of the fire trap. Some time after the fire had been extinguished, and everyone who had escaped the flames had calmed down a little, Li Feng asked the rescued Nicole and Henry if they had really been abducted and left in the building to die. Henry couldn't contain her emotions as she told Li Feng that this was indeed the case. First they were abducted, then they were taken to the building and set on fire, and all this was done by those scum. Li Feng cursed and replied that they had already cheated them several times, and they still got away with it. Young Henry asked Liu Feng what he meant by saying that they had been cheated on several times. Liu Feng explained to young Henry that first, they lured him out of the city along with Mina and the other warriors. After they succeeded, they set up an ambush outside the city in the forest and tried to treacherously kill him and Ming, but Niu Ben's soldiers intervened in time. Meanwhile, the enemy waited for them to leave the city and set fire to the food warehouse, while abducting and placing her and Nicole there in order to kill them. Henry just said in a voice full of anger that it was very mean what they did. Suddenly, Merchant Ho Luong Chong's voice rang out from behind, urging everyone to quickly help Lord Liu Feng extinguish the fire. Mena, seeing these false attempts to help, said that they were real scum. The merchant Ho Luong Chong ran dramatically ahead of his men, holding a bucket of water in his hands and shouting that they should help extinguish the fire. Ho Luong Chong told his men that Liu Feng had been so kind to them, and it was time to thank him and do something useful and good for him. His men all said that it was true, and they were ready to help Liu Feng. Ho Luong Chong began to command his men and distribute where to carry the water and where to pour it more. Niu Ben, indignant at what was happening, told Li Feng that they knew very well that they had caused the fire themselves. But now they pretend to be the good guys and try their best to help. Mena, hissing in anger, told the city Lord Liu Feng that they could kill all these scum right now. But the city Lord Liu Feng stopped the cat girl, telling her not to take any chances now. At this time, the merchant Ho Luong Chuang was laughing and thought that Liu Feng was an idiot and dared to interfere with him. Then these problems would be a good lesson for him. The city Lord Liu Feng explained to the cat girl Minna that the merchant Ho Luong Chuang and his people were now building a good image in front of everyone else. And therefore, it will be very unconvincing to act now without evidence. Cat girl Ming only asked Liu Feng what to do then, what to do if she just ignored them and pretended that they didn't understand anything. Liu Feng looked at the merchant Ho Luong Chong's efforts and thought how dare he do such a thing, but decided to wait for a more convenient moment. Merchant Ho Luong Chong told the city's Lord Liu Feng that as soon as he saw the flames of the burning fire, he immediately called for help from everyone he could. Merchant Ho Luong Chong added that unfortunately it was already too late and the fire was raging in full force. The city Lord Liu Feng responded to his words by saying that he was still very grateful for his help. And if not for the help of the merchant Ho Luong Chong, his castle in the city would have been completely destroyed. Merchant Ho Luong Chong thanked the city Lord Liu Feng for his kindness and asked what had happened and why the food warehouse had caught fire so suddenly. Residents of the city also asked why it happened that the food warehouse was engulfed in fire. Liu Feng asked the merchant Ho Luong Chong if he really asked about the warehouse. I added, looking him in the eye, that I knew whose fault it was. Merchant Ho Luong Chong thought for a moment and decided that Liu Feng knew the whole truth. But the city Lord Liu Feng told the merchant that it was all the fault of the horse thieves, and they did this dastardly act. The people of the city began to be indignant why they came at such a time, because the harvest time had not yet come, but they still came. The city Lord Liu Feng replied that he didn't know about their plan and was outside the city at that moment, so he didn't notice anyone suspicious. Liu Feng guessed that the thieves might still be in the city. People were scared to say that it could be very dangerous, but Liu Feng asked them not to worry, as it was his duty as the city lord to protect them. Liu Feng stated that from now on, he is closing the city to search for villains and protect the residents. The people happily approved of the Lord's words. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang told his subordinates what Liu Feng might have been up to, deciding to blame the horse thieves for the incident. Cat girl Mina asked Liu Feng why he blamed the horse thieves, because it is obvious that this is the tricks of the merchant. Liu Feng replied that she should wait and then see the new game. One of the bandits sitting at the table with the merchant said that Dan Liu Feng was very lucky that they couldn't kill him, but the fact that he managed to burn all of his supplies wasn't bad either. Moreover, Liu Feng thinks that it's all the fault of thieves on horseback. Another bandit scoffed that now Liu Feng wants to shut down Saiyang City to catch them. But the merchant Ho Luong Chuang yelled at him that he didn't understand that they were in danger. The merchant explained that Liu Feng had publicly accused them of being thieves on horseback, and he did this only because he was sure that they were the ones to blame, but he didn't have any evidence to directly accuse them. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang explained that now closing the city he will catch thieves, and this is all in order to intimidate him. The merchant's associates only asked what they should do then. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang replied that Liu Feng had no proof at the moment. If he comes to them with a search, then you need to be prepared for this. A sudden knock on the door drew the attention of those sitting at the table, and one of them asked what was the matter. In response, he heard that they were thieves on horseback, and they had come to steal supplies. The merchant Ho Luong Chuang thought to himself what a curse it was, and his men asked each other in bewilderment if they were thieves on horseback. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang yelled at his charges, explaining that they were Liu Feng's impostors. And he can't imagine that Liu Feng would be able to kill him, and how dare he even do such a thing. A servant came in and told the merchant that trouble had happened, and that it was indeed thieves on horseback who had attacked. He explained to the merchant that all the supplies had been stolen, and they had also killed all of his guards. The merchant Ho Luong Chuang's men asked him what they should do now that even the guards were dead. At that moment, the merchant's servants ran in, shouting for everyone to escape and be chased by the assassins. Everyone rushed to run and climb out of the windows, shouting in horror that they had to run for their lives. The merchant Ho Luong Chuang, who was stuck in the window opening, began to demand his subordinate to push him forward. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang thought out of fear that if he had known that there would come a day when he would be in such a situation, he would definitely have lost weight. Suddenly, the tripping assassin slammed into the stranded merchant and immediately crashed out of the window. A servant called out from the merchant's window and asked if he was all right. The merchant Ho Luong Chuang replied that everything was fine, and he was lucky because he was fat, and this softened the fall. The merchant, trying to escape with his servant, heard the screams of the assassins behind them, who tried to catch up with them. The servant told the merchant Ho Luong Chuang that the thieves were already here and needed to inform the city Lord Liu Feng quickly. The merchant Ho Luong Chuang angrily asked the servant what he still needed to tell the Lord, calling him an idiot at the same time. But the servant only naively replied that he should inform Lord Liu Feng that the thieves on horseback were already here. Over dinner at the castle, Liu Feng asked the rescued girls Henry and Nicole if they were feeling better. Nicole replied that she was fine and feeling much better. Henry replied that she was not at all well because of what had happened. The young beastman said that she thought she would die in that place and not be able to escape. She explained that she needed more sweets in order to calm down and recover. The city Lord Liu Feng told her that it was fine, and she could eat as many sweets as she wanted, as long as it made her feel better. Mena immediately handed Henry a cup of coffee to wash down all the sweets. A servant came in and spoke to the city Lord Liu Feng, telling him that he had become aware of the thieves on horseback who had just entered the city. The servant also said that thieves on horseback stole all the supplies and are now heading for the exit. The city lord wasted no time in calling out to his knight Niu Ben. Liu Feng ordered him to gather an army as quickly as possible and take up weapons. As he headed for the exit, Liu Feng ordered everyone to go chase after the thieves on horseback. At this time, thieves on horseback, stealing carts with supplies through the streets of the city, rejoiced in their success and were fully confident of impunity. They only cheered themselves on with loud shouts and whipped their horses furiously, but the road to the exit was blocked by the barriers that had been set up. Knight Niu Ben was calling for the people of the city to gather and immediately help Lord Liu Feng catch the horse thieves. Niu Ben promised the people that anyone who caught the horse thieves would receive a generous reward from the city lord himself. People began to come out of their huts and ask each other in bewilderment what had happened at such a late hour. One of the guys with a pitchfork in his hands explained that it was necessary to fight the thieves on horseback, and the city lord Li Feng himself would be in charge. Young people began to gather full of desire to catch and kill the thieves on horseback who had bored them for many years. After organizing and arming themselves, people joined Li Feng, chanting that they would catch the thieves and get a reward. Seeing the confidence of his men and driven by the desire for revenge, Li Feng gave the command, "Everyone go ahead." Li Feng asked the cat girl Ming, who was following him, to go back and hide in the tree. Li Feng explained to Mina that she needed to wait for the thieves on horseback to show up, and then she would inform him. Mina agreed and immediately disappeared in the right place and began to observe. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang, hiding among the huts of the city's residents, thought that there were a lot of attackers, and could it really be thieves on horseback? Everything pointed to this, and he decided that it was not worth taking chances and Aksai Yang City was too dangerous, so it was better to get out of here as quickly as possible. One of his men told Ho Luong Chuang that the gate was already very close, but the merchant Ho Luong Chuang told him to keep his voice low and not attract attention. But suddenly a young man ran past them with a shovel at the ready. He shouted to wait for him, because he also wants to catch thieves on horses and get the promised reward. Ho Luong Chuang looked at this guy and said that when he got out of Haksai Yan City, he would definitely tell Baron Omar to kill all the residents of the city and Li Feng along with them. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang, unable to contain his anger, barked at his men to follow him forward faster. The merchant Ho Luong Chuang and his men got out of the city and found themselves in the forest. After making sure that there was no danger nearby, the merchant Ho Luong Chuang gave the order to go ahead after him. One of his men saw an overturned wagon ahead and scattered sacks of supplies, shouted that it was food, and rushed forward to it. The people of the merchant Ho Luong Chuang, after examining the abandoned supplies and the cart, said that it would now belong to them. They asked each other why it was just lying around and decided that if no one needed it, then they would take all the goods left behind. But the merchant Ho Luong Chuang, looking at the efforts of his people, sensed something was wrong and told them to immediately stop looting the grain they found. Merchant Ho Luong Chuang explained to his men that something was wrong here and that it must have been a trap set on purpose. But one of the merchant's men, Merchant Ho Luong Chuang, replied that it was not a trap, but only an overturned cart that those who were running away decided to throw. The merchant, Ho Luong Chuang, called him an idiot and said that if he wanted to die here, he shouldn't involve him. But the boy waved him off, only saying that the merchant Ho Luong Chuang himself was afraid of something. And immediately the guy called the other people, saying that this grain now belongs to them, and it needs to be urgently collected and divided. The guy began to actively command the collection of bags, urging his colleagues. He told them to hurry up and put the bags in the cart faster. The merchant Ho Luong Chuang watched his men work in silence, but this time they refused to listen. When they had finished putting the bags in the cart, one of the men said that the job was done and it was time to leave, and turned to the merchant Ho Luong Chuang. The guy told him that, as he said, nothing bad happened and everything will be fine. The guy asked the merchant Ho Luong Chuang if he would go with them or not, but the merchant Ho Luong Chuang refused to go with them and said that if they were going to die here, they should wait until he was far away. Suddenly, the people of Aksai Yan City came out of the forest to meet the merchant Ho Luong Chuang and blocked his escape route. People from the crowd began to shout that these were the same thieves, and it was necessary to catch them as quickly as possible. From the other side of the road, the city lord Aksai Yang Liu Feng approached with a detachment, along with his knight Niu Ben. Liu Feng exclaimed that the thieves they were looking for were here and ordered them to be arrested immediately. Surrounded by the merchant Ho Luong Chuang's men, they begged for mercy and told Liu Feng that they were not the thieves everyone was looking for. The lord of Aksai Yang City, Liu Feng, told them that how could they not be thieves if they had a stolen wagon with the provisions of his city. Residents of the city began to say that what a horror it is, since the grain sellers turned out to be real thieves. Residents began to accuse them of stealing their food and simply wanting to run away with it. There were also calls from the crowd to immediately deal with the thieves and kill them in public. Merchant Ho Luong Tuong became indignant at this accusation and told the city Lord Liu Feng that how dare he lie to everyone around him. The city Lord Liu Feng just grinned and replied to Merchant Ho Luong Trong that the situation was already very clear. Liu Feng added that as a merchant, Ho Luong Trong can generally continue to deny his guilt, since he was caught along with the stolen supplies from Xi Yang City. Liu Feng didn't continue the meaningless conversation and gave the command to his men to immediately arrest Merchant Ho Luong Trong and his men. Liu Feng's warriors immediately carried out the order given to them, pinning down the perpetrators of the theft to the delight of the crowd. Residents of the city of Xi'an, seeing how the bound merchant Ho Luong Trong and his people were being carried in a cage, were very surprised by such a picture. Residents of the city asked each other what really happened and why exactly the grain merchants were arrested. No one could understand why they had been captured and not the thieves on horseback. After all, just recently, the merchant Ho Luong Trong, along with his people, actively helped put out fire in the Xi'an city's supply warehouse. All the residents, watching the cart with the arrested merchants, found this a very strange event, but finding no explanation, they continued to go about their business. Knight Niu Bang told City Lord Liu Feng that disguising himself as thieves on horseback was a great idea on his part. The City Lord Liu Feng replied to his Knight Niu Ben that these merchants were already cooperating with the horse thieves to harm Xi Yang City. The City Lord Liu Feng explained that he just made these merchants answer for everything they did to him earlier. Liu Feng added that this is called an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth. The city's Lord Xi Yang Liu Feng addressed the residents gathered in the square. Liu Feng told them that he knew and understood their concerns about the grain merchants being captured. People from the crowd began to answer that this is exactly the case, and they do not understand everything that happened. Residents began to ask what was really going on and why the grain merchants were captured, because the city Lord Liu Feng himself claimed to have caught thieves on horseback. The lord of the city, Liu Feng, explained to the residents of the city that the grain merchants led by Ho Luong Tuong were the same thieves on horseback who stole their grain supplies. The crowd brightened up at Liu Feng's statement, and angry shouts of inquiry could be heard from the crowd. The city lord went on to report that Ho Luong Chong and his men had collaborated with the horse thieves and had burned all their supplies, deliberately setting the fire. The merchant Ho Luong Trong arranged all this only in order to sell his food to the residents of the city much more expensive and get additional profit from it. The city lord Liu Feng explained that as soon as things went wrong for the merchants, they immediately decided to run away so that they wouldn't be caught and brought to justice. Liu Feng said that thanks to the efforts of some residents, he still managed to catch the culprits last night. Some people in the crowd who participated in the capture of the grain merchants confirmed the words of the city lord Liu Feng. They said that they were indeed witnesses at the scene of yesterday's crime, and they saw with their own eyes how the grain merchants led by Ho Luong Chuang ran away with the looted property. The crowd became animated by such evidence, and people began to demand that the grain sellers who deprived them of food should be immediately punished and killed. Liu Feng stated that these ruthless merchants only dared to betray their city for personal reasons and profit. Liu Feng added that they risked the lives of everyone in the city and asked people what punishment they deserved for their crime. The crowd unanimously declared that the merchants only deserved to die. Liu Feng replied that it was true, and they couldn't hope for mercy. The city's Lord Liu Feng stated that he was accusing these merchants of colluding with horse thieves, and that all the evidence had been presented. Liu Feng repeated that such a crime is an unforgivable offense, and both merchants are sentenced to be hanged. As the ropes tightened under the weight of the culprits, Liu Feng once again reminded them that they had burned their supplies and raised the price of grain for their own benefit, thus condemning the people to misery and starvation. Liu Feng explained that in order to prevent crimes of this kind from happening in their city anymore, he is announcing that he will facilitate the food trade. And from now on, everyone can sell grain in the castle. The people were delighted with Liu Feng's announcement, realizing that they themselves could now sell grain to him. Liu Feng thought that in the fight against hunger, this was only the first step and the price would be stable, and in the future, they wouldn't have to worry about people running out of food. One of the villagers asked Liu Feng what he really meant by saying that they could trade in the castle. The city lord Liu Feng explained that after the harvest, if they have a surplus of grain and there is no place to store it, then they don't want the food to spoil, so they can sell it to the city lord. Liu Feng added that in doing so, he will monitor the market price and then sell the food back to residents who have a food shortage. Liu Feng asked the residents not to worry, saying that as long as he was their lord, he was responsible for the entire city and for them. He promised that from now on, no one in Hexiang City would ever starve to death. People began to welcome Liu Feng's words, and some regretted that it hadn't happened sooner, since many people wouldn't have starved to death. The city lord Liu Feng gathered all of his retainers in the castle and told them that they were becoming more principled and organized people. After repeating this several times, Liu Feng announced that today he would assign different positions to everyone present with clearer tasks to complete. Young Nicole happily wondered what kind of position her brother Liu Feng would give her. The city lord Liu Feng solemnly told his knight Niu Ben that he was appointing him seneschal, and that he would be responsible for everything that happened in the city from now on. Niu Ben replied that he accepted the appointment with honor, even though he thought to himself that he was not very familiar with the title given to him by the city lord Liu Feng. Next on the list of appointments was young Nicole. Liu Feng told the girl that he knew how hard it was for her to take responsibility for all the chores in the castle and do it herself. Liu Feng informed young Nicole that from now on, she would just need to be in charge of everything in the castle, and he was appointing her as the castle's mistress. Young Nicole happily replied that she was happy with such an appointment. The next one turned out to be young Beastman Henry. Liu Feng told her that he was gifting her the position of secretary. Seeing Henry's distress, Liu Feng asked her if she really didn't like the position of chief secretary. The beast girl Henry just grunted in response and said that she agreed with his decision. Let's continue our assignments. The city lord Liu Feng turned to the cat girl Ming. He said that she would be by his side and she was responsible for his complete safety. The girl Mina replied that she was ready and it would be as before. The protection of the head of the city is familiar to her. The next person to be addressed by the city lord Liu Feng was the Niu brothers. Liu Feng told them that all 5 of them were being appointed as the military leaders of his army. The brothers unanimously replied that they would not let you down and accept this appointment with pride. After finishing their assignments, Liu Feng said that from now on, they would all work together to create a bright future for Hexiang City and all its residents. All of his entourage responded with one voice that they agreed with his goal and would help him in everything. The city lord Liu Feng replied that if everyone is at the same time, then they should start to achieve their goal. Chief Knight Niu Ben showed off the formation of the soldiers and told city head Liu Feng that they were people from the last selection for soldiers. The even ranks of soldiers, upon seeing the head of the city, greeted Liu Feng with a loud cheer. Liu Feng admired this discipline and replied that it wasn't exactly good, but rather excellent. Immediately, the head of the city, Liu Feng, ordered the soldiers to bring the closed boxes that he had prepared. The soldiers, carrying heavy crates, only asked each other what the head of the city, Liu Feng, could have prepared for them. The mayor said that they should be opened and showed everyone the contents of the boxes. When the soldiers saw what was inside, they said that they were bows, but they were not the same ones that they usually use. Looking at the new weapons, the soldiers wondered what these bows were made of. They immediately realized that the weapon was not made of wood, but of some amazing and unfamiliar material. The head of the city, Liu Feng, replied to the soldier that these were magic bows that he had brought back from his hometown, and that they were called recurve bows. The soldiers cheered at his words about the magic weapon, saying among themselves that they had never heard of such a thing before. Liu Feng announced that he planned to select 50 people who would be proficient with the bow and create a special team of archers. The soldiers replied that the team of archers sounded cool. The head of the city, Liu Feng, asked the soldiers who wanted to try to shoot the bow first, adding that whoever hits the target will receive a reward. The soldiers were confused as they debated who would shoot first, and one of the guys, who was quite good with a bow, hesitated, afraid of making a fool of himself by using an unfamiliar weapon. Liu Feng asked the hesitant soldiers that no one really wanted to be the first. Still, Liu Feng waited for the prize contender, and a strong guy approached him and said that he wanted to try archery first. The guy approached the head of the city Liu Feng and confirmed his decision that he wanted to be the first to shoot an unusual bow. The head of the city, Liu Feng, praised the guy for this, calling him a daredevil, and handed him an unusual bow. The rookie bravely took up the new weapon, thinking that let everyone look at him, and he should not let down. But after a moment, his hand snapped off, and he screamed that he was in pain, and there was blood on his face. Trying to stretch the elastic bowstring again, he began to help himself with his foot and shout at the same time that he simply did not believe that he could not cope with it. His next attempt was also unsuccessful, and this only made the surrounding soldiers indignant. They began to say that this new unusual bow was too tough, since such a strong guy couldn't handle it despite his best efforts. The master of the city, Liu Feng, was approached by his chief warrior, Niu Ben, and said that this bow was really very tough for his people, and besides, it did not look like the bows they were used to using normally. Seneschal Niu Ben asked City Chief Liu Feng if he could show him how to use this magic weapon himself. Liu Feng was surprised when he asked Niu Ben about his wish. Niu Ben said once again that he wanted Liu Feng to show him how to use this unusual bow properly. Catgirl Minna asked the head of the city Liu Feng that really he too will not be able to cope with such an unusual weapon. Liu Feng only replied in a low voice, "How did it happen?" He thought that since they wanted him to draw the arrow, he would do it. Liu Feng knew that every time he traveled through space, his abilities and strength would increase slightly. Liu Feng decided that he had traveled many times before, so archery shouldn't be too much of a problem for him. The head of the city, Liu Feng, replied to everyone that of course he would show how to use a new type of weapon and show all his abilities in this. As soon as Liu Feng fired his bow, the soldiers cheered, admiring the strength of their leader, Liu Feng. In surprise, both Niu Ben and Ming said in unison, "Is Liu Feng really that strong?" Liu Feng handed the bow back to the guy, telling him to try again. The guy said he agreed. The head of Xi Yang, Liu Feng, explained to the boy that the left arm should be kept straight, firmly resting on the legs, and the back should be kept as straight as possible. The guy, listening to Liu Feng's instructions, thought that he just couldn't screw up this time. As soon as the bowstring was taut, the soldiers began to shout that he really could do it. But the soldiers immediately shouted at him to stop immediately as they realized that the arrow was pointed in their direction. And as soon as the guy's arm broke and the arrow fell from the bow, there was a panic among the soldiers, and everyone began to shout to each other, "Beware." Looking at all this, the head of the city, Liu Feng, thought that they probably shouldn't have been trusted with such a dangerous weapon just yet. The soldiers, looking at the duck killed by the shooter, were surprised that the birds were so far in the sky, but he still hit them. They began to say that this bow is really amazing and absolutely magical. The guy who shot was happy as a child and shouted that he had hit the target. The head of Xi Yang City, Liu Feng, went to the iron mine to watch the progress of the work. Before entering, it was written that the resources of the earth are unlimited, and the amount of iron produced depends on the person. It was also said that the one who gets the most iron is brave. Looking around, the head of the city, Liu Feng, thought that he was indeed a champion, since he had magic bows and iron. Suddenly, an old man turned to the head of the city, Liu Feng, and said that he had extracted iron. Liu Feng turned around and asked him if he really managed to do it so quickly. The old man repeated and said that they really did get the iron, then asked the city head Liu Feng if they deserved to get food from him now. The head of the city, Liu Feng, looked at the piece of iron shown by the old man and wondered what the hell it was and how iron could have become like this. Still, the head of the city, Liu Feng, thoughtfully replied that it was still too early to relax and a lot still depended on him. Liu Feng understood that in this world, as it turns out, you need to mine iron. And the first step on the way to this is mining. As he continued to inspect the mining site, the head of the city, Liu Feng, noticed a young man swinging a sledgehammer and said that it was quite good. The head of the city, Liu Feng, turned to him and told him that he should fight with the stone using force like a real man, and advised him to hit much harder. The guy, surprised that he was addressed, The city lord Liu Feng himself replied that he would try his best. Seeing the young man swinging the sledgehammer violently, city head Liu Feng praised him, saying that he was doing the right thing and that he was doing well. Suddenly, a rock slanted out from under the hammer crashed into the city head Liu Feng. Liu Feng only had time to think about how much he was hurting and why he was being punished because he didn't do anything wrong. The head of the city, Liu Feng, knew that the second step after mining was the ability to start a fire. At one of the huts, people tried to build a fire, using flints to tell each other that they could not do it. One of the guys, realizing the reason for the failure, said that the flint was wet after yesterday's rain, and therefore it would no longer be possible to make a fire with it. After observing them, the head of the city, Liu Feng, decided to introduce these people to the black technology and show them the real lighter from his world. Turning to the guy, the head of the city, Liu Feng, told him that he would try it for making a fire. The guy, looking at an object that was not unfamiliar to him, asked if it would really help build a fire for him. The head of the city, Liu Feng, feeling his superiority, replied to the guy that of course it would help him in making a fire, because this is a high-tech thing from his hometown. The guy decided to immediately try an unusual thing that the city head Liu Feng gave him and immediately smashed a rock on the lighter. After that, the guy, coughing and sneezing, asked what this unusual smell was and why his hands stank so much. The head of the city, Liu Feng, only said in a chagrined voice that they were all laughing at him by doing everything wrong. Liu Feng was approached by the cat girl Mena and told that he needed to get up and go, because there were still places that they needed to visit today. Step 3 for iron production was the art of smelting the extracted ore. One of the workers at the furnace told another that the ore was not melting, probably because of the small fire. The second man wearily replied that he was trying and fanning the fire as best he could. The head of the city, Liu Feng, told them to look at the long pipe in his hand. The workers, surprised by how Liu Feng used a pipe to fan the fire to the melting point of the ore, said that their lord was good at everything he did. Liu Feng replied that everything was ready and there was nothing else to do. One of the soldiers said that he understood the trick with the pipe. Bringing a huge pipe, he told everyone to move over and let him try it too. The head of the city, Liu Feng, did not have time to stop him, only said after the explosion that he would still return for his iron. The head of the city, Liu Feng, walking away from the explosion, said that being a lord wasn't as easy as he thought. Liu Feng informed Niu Ben that he didn't want to go to the paper mill. But then he added that making paper is not such a dangerous production and everything will be fine this time. Ba Fu, who met him, said that he was glad that the city lord had finally come to see him. The head of the city, Liu Feng, asked Old Man Ba Fu what had happened to him. Old Man Ba Fu asked Liu Feng to look at the destroyed paper production tents. The head of the city, Liu Feng, asked Old Man Ba Fu what had happened here and whether someone had fought here, destroying everything in the area. Old Man Ba Fu replied to Liu Feng that the paper-making technology was too complex and his artisans couldn't understand the technology no matter how hard they tried. The mayor, Liu Feng, thought that he had already found a book that clearly explained the entire paper-making process and that it was still difficult for artisans to understand and use it. Artisans studying the procedure for making paper from the book constantly argued and accused each other of using the instructions incorrectly. They were constantly fighting and telling each other that neither of them knew how to read a book properly. Looking at this scolding, the head of the city, Liu Feng, only thought that he had overestimated their literacy abilities. Little Beastman Henry, drawing something on paper, was happy and said that she was very funny. The head of the city, Liu Feng, asked Henry what she was doing. Young Henry tried to take the drawing back and told Liu Feng to let her explain everything. The mayor asked her what else she could draw besides that. After a while, young Henry finished the task of the head of the city, asked him if her drawings were suitable. The head of the city, Liu Feng, told her not to worry and the layout would go as it should. Henry said that she did exactly as he ordered. The head of the city, Liu Feng, replied that everything looks great, and that's what the chief secretary should do using his incredible talent. Old man Bufu said that Henry had worked very hard with the drawings, so that even children could now understand the whole process of making paper. The head of the city, Liu Feng, called all the artisans to come to him urgently. Artisans, looking at the instructions for making paper shown with the help of drawings, began to praise young Henry. They began to say that it was incredible and just a miracle, and even illiterate people can understand what they should do now. Young Henry just laughed in response and said that it was just a small thing, and she would still show everyone what she was really capable of. Looking at her, the head of the city, Liu Feng, thought that she liked it all. Old man Bufu reported to the mayor Liu Feng that the paper production was now strictly on schedule and it would be possible to use the paper for any needs. Bufu also said that iron mining is also becoming much more productive. He guessed that thanks to young Henry's talent, they would now be able to overcome all the problems with producing materials. But still, Bufu noticed that more practice is needed and the workers will become masters of their craft. The mayor Liu Feng replied that when everything is ready and set up, they can start building schools and shops. Knight Mu Beng told city chief Liu Feng that his army was currently training to resist thieves on horseback and asked why they were doing this right now. Liu Feng explained that defending against thieves on horseback is just an initial stage of training. He explained that stability will lead to development. Liu Feng showed the new map of the city and said that this was what he really wanted. The city's mayor, Liu Feng, said that this is Hataiyang's new future. Master Tori, approaching Xaiyan City, said that he didn't know what his father was thinking when he sent him to this remote poor area to talk about trade with the local lord Liu Feng. The servant agreed with Master Tori's words and added that he was sorry to give away 150 kilograms of food as a gift when he first met the city head Liu Feng. Master Tori replied that he didn't want to stay in this city any longer than necessary. He added that he needed to do everything necessary and get out of here as soon as possible. Once inside the city of Xaiyan, Master Tori was surprised by the new transformation of the city and said that this is really the same city that he was sent to. Master Tori's thoughts were suddenly interrupted by a stone falling on his head. A servant immediately ran up to him, shouting and asking if he was all right. Master Tori got to his feet and sighed heavily in response. Master Tori's servant angrily asked the worker at the top of the building that how dare he hurt his master, and threatened him with an early death. The worker also responded emotionally to Master Tori's servant that they probably didn't want to live anymore, since they didn't see that sign over there that says construction work is underway and no trespassing is allowed. Master Tori, after recovering a little, only thought that soon the thieves on horseback would start their attack on Xaiyan City, and what was the city Lord Liu Feng doing at the moment? Knight Mu Ben met Master Tori and his entourage at the castle gate, and said to them, "Welcome to Xaiyan City." Looking at Mu Ben, Master Tori thought that he was not what he had imagined, and that he was very beautifully dressed. Master Tori, calling Mu Ben the head of the city Liu Feng, said that it was a great honor for him to come to his city Xaiyang. Mu Ben replied to Master Tori that he must be very tired after the long journey to the city. Mu Ben informed Master Tori that the head of the city, Liu Feng, had prepared tea and dessert for him, and invited him inside the castle. Master Tori was surprised to think that the person who met him was not the city Lord Liu Feng, but rather that he was dressed much better than him. Master Tori only wondered how much more magnificent the city Lord Liu Feng himself would be in such a case. Master Tori rejoiced at the food prepared for him, thinking of the beautiful cakes that had been brought to him. Mu Ben asked Master Tori to wait for a while, as the city Lord Liu Feng still has some business to attend to, and will be back in a couple of minutes. Master Tori replied that it wasn't a big deal, and he could certainly wait as long as needed. Master Tori, after tasting the cake, said that they were amazing and incredibly delicious. He said that they were extremely delicious, and he wanted to buy them without fail. Master Tori continued to praise the cakes prepared for him as he finished his meal. And when they were finished, Master Tori thought regretfully that he wanted more, and then, looking at the remaining crumbs, decided that they also looked delicious. Mu Ben only gasped when Master Tori hit his plate with a clatter as he tried to finish the last of the cakes. Master Tori was addressed by the city Lord Liu Feng as he entered and said that he apologized for having to wait so long for him to appear. Looking at his guest, the city Lord Liu Feng thought that the city of Bakfong from which he came is located near rivers and is ideal for developing trade. Because of this, it is one of the most favorable cities in the West in terms of trade. Then why does this Master Tori look incredibly stupid? He told his guest that he would welcome him to Aksai Yang City and that his name was Liu Feng. Master Tori only thought that this city head Liu Feng looked really cool. Master Tori replied to Liu Feng that he was also very happy to meet them and asked him to sit down next to him. The mayor of the city, Liu Feng, said that first of all, he wanted to thank his guest, Master Tori. Liu Feng explained that if it wasn't for the grain of Beichin City, he wouldn't have been able to handle the difficulties so easily. The city Lord Liu Feng asked Master Tori about the real purpose of his visit to Aksai Yang City. Master Tori replied that his city and he were happy to help Liu Feng in his time of need. Master Tori explained that he had come to Aksai Yang City to negotiate a mutually beneficial trade in leather and fur. Niu Ben interjected and asked Master Tori if it was really about the leather and fur trade. Niu Ben asked Master Tori if he was really that reckless, since leather and fur were an important part of the military's resources. Master Tori replied to Niu Ben that as a noble, he certainly knows how important these resources are to any city. Master Tori explained that he understood everything, but the situation was a bit special. Master Tori turned to the city Lord Liu Feng and said that he hoped he would take this into consideration. Liu Feng listened to Master Tori and thought that he was coming to see him for the purpose of trading in military resources, which meant that Bakfon City might not be as good as it was said to be. In response, the city Lord Liu Fei replied that he agreed to Master Tori's suggestion. Niu Ben only tried to object to Liu Feng, but was immediately stopped by him. The city Lord Liu Feng told Master Tori that he had one condition to reach a deal. Master Tori asked what this condition was that Liu Feng was proposing. The head of the city, Liu Feng, stated that he needed a few head of cattle, not very many, but only 100 bulls, 300 goats, and 200 horses. The lord of the city, Liu Feng, who was doing the calculations, thought that he had advanced iron mining technology and therefore didn't need resources like furs or leather. Since he didn't need them, he could easily exchange them for livestock for farming. Master Tori objected and said that it was too much of a price that Liu Feng had stated. The city Lord Liu Feng asked Master Tori how many head of cattle he could give him in this case. Master Tori replied that they could only give 30 bulls and asked if that was enough for Liu Feng. After some thought, Liu Feng stated that in that case, he wanted 300 horses and 500 goats. Master Tori thought that Liu Feng was the devil of a negotiator. The city Lord Liu Feng asked Master Tori if he really didn't have such a resource. Master Tori thought that his intelligence had reported that thieves on horseback were preparing to attack Aksai Yan City, and if he does not have time to conclude a deal, then he may suffer, so the agreement must be concluded. Master Tori made a new suggestion to Liu Feng. He said he was willing to give 30 oxen, 120 horses, and 300 goats. Master Tori, not hearing the answer immediately, was afraid that Liu Feng would not be enough again. Liu Feng himself happily thought that this was exactly what he was aiming for, and all thanks to his excellent eloquent skill. Liu Feng replied to Master Tori that he agreed and it was a great deal. Master Tori thanked Liu Feng for the agreement he had reached. Liu Feng told Master Tori before leaving to be careful on the road. Master Tori, when leaving Aksai Yan City, still thought that he might have been deceived. Niu Ben told Liu Feng that since Bakfong City was going to buy up military resources, it was possible that horse thieves would start acting up soon. Liu Feng replied to Niu Ben that in that case, they urgently needed to prepare to repel the attack. Baron Carter and his son arrived in the town of Litma to visit Baron Omar. Fesca, watching what was happening in the main hall of the castle, told his father that the Count's son was just like a sly dog. Baron Carter immediately corrected him, calling him an idiot, and told him to keep his voice down if he didn't want to be buried with him. The lord of the city of Litma, Baron Omar, asked the man on his knees that all his servants, grain merchants, and knights had really been killed. The man on his knees replied that it was true and that it had happened that way. Then Baron Omar asked where his money was in this case. The man on his knees replied that they couldn't find the money. Baron Omar asked how it was possible that all the servants, grain merchants, knights, and money were lost, and asked who dared to do it. The trembling man on his knees replied that he had heard people say that they all tried to kill a man with a noble title, and then they were captured by him and publicly executed. Baron Omar only growled back that they were all useless trash. Baron Carter advised Baron Omar not to get angry about this and stated that dealing with Xi Yang City would be damn easy. Baron Carter said that you shouldn't spoil your mood because of some stupid idiots. Baron Omar replied that this was not the case at all and accused Baron Carter of selling the city to Xi Yang. Baron Omar asked Baron Carter that he was a wolf who pretended to cooperate with him, but actually cheated him behind his back. Baron Carter replied that it was impossible and he could not afford to do so. Baron Carter said that he really wants to work with Baron Omar and be his partner. Baron Carter explained that such words of Baron Omar only upset him and offended him. Fesca said that it was indeed as his father had said. Fesca explained that if they didn't really want to be on his side, they wouldn't have sent their disguised knights to loot Baxter City. Baron Omar replied to the father and son that they should not deceive him and play with him, otherwise they would regret it. Baron Carter said that if Baron Omar didn't believe him, then he would personally go there and give a clear answer himself. But Baron Omar replied that there was no need. Baron Carter himself thought that he should return to his former city after all. Once in Xi Yang City, the disguised Baron Carter was surprised by everything around him and thought that he was really so old and maybe he was hallucinating, or maybe he just got lost and got to the wrong place. Baron Carter overheard the residents discussing how City Lord Li Feng was recruiting even more high-paid employees. They praised the City Lord for being caring and giving them jobs and salaries. They'd also mentioned the former owner of the city, Baron Carter, calling him a cruel man who exploited them and did not give them food at all. Baron Fez's son said that how dare they speak of his father in such a way, and that they would die for it. Baron Carter tried to stop his son, saying that he really didn't want them to be found out, but one of the residents urged the others to look in the direction where Baron Carter and his son were. Baron Carter told his son that it looked like people recognized them and needed to run, but the villagers ran past the Baron and his son, leaving them bewildered. It turned out that people were rushing to greet their Lord Li Feng. After understanding all this, Baron Carter only wondered why Li Feng had a Baichin man by his side. Master Tori, meanwhile, informed Li Feng that the goats and oxen he wanted had already been delivered and asked about the fur and leather promised. Li Feng told Master Tori not to worry and said that he needed to go to a certain place with him in order to see something amazing. Baron Carter thought about what Li Feng might be up to and told his son to go take a look. Baron Carter was surprised by Li Feng's plan to open a store in Xi Yang City. The mayor of Xi Yang City, Li Feng, informed the crowd that a store had been built in Xi Yang City for everyone present to improve their standard of living. Baron Carter only asked his son what Li Feng was doing in general. Fesca said what good counters can do in general, and why go to such lengths for them. People cheered happily as the store opened and praised their city lord, Li Feng. The mayor of the city, Li Feng, opened the doors and told residents that the store was open and everyone could enter it. The head of the city, Li Feng, told the Beastman girls, Anri and Mina, that they could also go to the store and buy whatever they wanted. People enthusiastically rushed into the store, surprised by the large number of products presented in the store. Baron Carter yelled at one guy to stop pushing, but the guy told him to move away and make way for him. Baron Carter, who had fallen, only shouted at them not to push or step on him. Baron Fez's trampled son shouted after the villagers that they were idiots and needed to be careful. The enraged son of Baron Fez said that how dare these commoners step on noble people at all. Baron Carter only replied that, thank God, it was all over. Young Henry asked the clerk in the store how much the fruit candies that are on the shelf cost. Looking at her, Baron Carter told his son Fez that this was the Beast Girl who was standing near the city head Li Feng. The salesman told young Henry that the lollipops were worth 1 iron coin. Henry said that if they were so cheap, then she would take as many as 10 lollipops. Baron Carter and his son were surprised and asked each other what kind of iron coin the seller had mentioned. One of the shopkeepers explained to them what they were talking about and said that since they didn't know, the iron coin was the coin that their Lord Liu Feng had issued. He explained that its exchange rate is 1 copper coin equals 10 iron coins. Baron Carter and Fesca only thought that how dare this commoner look down on them and receive. Fesca said that Liu Feng made some nonsense out of this new iron coin, but Baron Carter replied that it wasn't nonsense and pointed him to a porcelain shop where Master Tory from Baxter City had visited. Master Tory told the clerk in the store that he wanted 50 pieces of these items, but then corrected himself and said that it was better to pack him as many as 100 pieces. Master Tory said that he couldn't believe that there were such fine pieces of porcelain in the store, but then he thought about what would happen if he bought them, what to do with the fur and leather he needed. As a result, Master Tory said that only the poor think and hesitate, and exclaimed that he wanted all the porcelain products and spent 200 silver coins. Fesca told his father that it was incredible to get 200 silver coins like this in the blink of an eye. Baron Carter corrected him that the amount was much higher, considering how much all the other people had spent, and the residents really at this time dismantled all the goods that they got to, arranging in some places disputes about who got to what first. Fesca said that it was only the first day of trading, and Li Feng had already received so much. He said that if they hadn't sold the city, it would all have been theirs. Baron Carter replied to his son that Aksai Yang City originally belongs to them, and when they take it away from Li Feng, then even Baron Omar will be nothing in front of them. The little boy, looking at Baron Carter and hearing his words, thought that maybe these strange people were the thieves that their Lord Liu Feng had mentioned. Deciding that this was indeed the case, the boy ran and shouted, while pointing out to Baron Carter that he wanted to kidnap him. People began to run after Baron Carter and his son, shouting that they should be arrested, and they are the ones who kidnap children. Fesca asked Baron Carter's father why these people were chasing them. Baron Carter replied that he didn't know and said that the exit was already nearby and we should hide there. Their way was blocked by the city's security, which reacted to the riots on the territory of the store. One of the guards told Baron Carter that he couldn't get away with it. Baron Carter's son Fesca shouted that there were beastmen ahead and ordered his guards to make a path for them to escape. One of the guys and the city guard, a young beastman, ordered the fleeing warriors to stop, but seeing that they didn't react, he repelled their attack. The attackers only screamed in pain as they writhed on the ground. All Baron Carter and his son said was that it was simply impossible. The young beastman ordered his warriors to immediately arrest the intruders and send them to the city Lord Li Feng. Baron Carter and his son became indignant and shouted that they were not to blame for anything. Catgirl Minna told Li Feng that this new store is very big. The city Lord Liu Feng replied that of course it was big, because that's how he planned to make it. When the guards arrived, they turned to Liu Feng and informed him that they had arrested the kidnappers. Liu Feng asked what kind of kidnappers they were talking about. The warrior pointed to the 2 captured men and said, "Here they are." Baron Carter told his son to lower his head as low as possible, hiding his face to prevent Liu Feng from recognizing them. But Catgirl Minna told Liu Feng that she recognized Baron Carter. Liu Feng said in surprise, "Is this really Baron Carter?" Minna replied that it really was the damn old man. Immediately, the head of the city, Liu Feng, asked her to take her time and not kill Baron Carter just yet. Minna said that Carter had treated her terribly and that she couldn't let him get away with it. Liu Feng explained to her that he would never forgive him either. But since they had infiltrated the city and disguised themselves, they must have some bad idea in mind. Liu Feng asked Catgirl Ming to give him some time to think. Mina replied that she would listen to Liu Feng, because everything depends on him in this situation. Liu Feng thanked the Beastmen warriors for their skillful actions in capturing the troublemakers. The head of the city, Liu Feng, said that since the 2 of them were making a mess in the store, they should be put in the dungeon immediately. The soldiers immediately replied with one voice that they would carry out the order. Baron Carter wondered how these commoners could arrest him and his son. He decided that his pride wouldn't allow it and asked Liu Feng to wait for his decision. The warrior immediately shouted at him, how dare he address the Lord by his first name. The captives turned to Liu Feng and said that they were Baron Carter and Fesca. Liu Feng asked them what had happened and why they were here. Liu Feng apologized to Baron Carter and said that his guards had mistaken them for kidnappers. Liu Feng asked Baron Carter why he decided to return to Xiyang City. Baron Carter thought that it was impossible to let Liu Feng know that he had come to collect information. He replied that he had come to the city to talk to Liu Feng. The head of the city, Liu Feng, asked Baron Carter what he wanted to say about Xiyang City. Baron Carter replied that it was nothing special and probably only related to its aging. Baron Carter explained that as people age, they tend to remember their past. Baron Carter said that when he had only had this small town for a few days, he had already made plans and always thought about it. Baron Carter told Liu Feng that he wanted to buy back Xiyang City from him. Liu Feng wondered what nonsense Baron Carter was telling him. He realized that Carter must have seen the store's profitability and therefore wanted to buy the city back. Baron Carter said that he understood the strangeness of his suggestion to Liu Feng, but asked him not to worry. Baron Carter promised Liu Feng that he wouldn't lose anything if he sold Xiyang City back to him. Baron Carter said that the very crystal glasses he sold to him had gone up in price, and now they were worth 18 gold coins. He explained that the price has tripled. Baron Carter promised to give Liu Feng 4 glasses. The lady of the castle, Nicole, said she had brought wine. Baron Carter wondered if they really used the same crystal goblets here to receive guests, and decided that they were trying to insult him. Nicole suggested that Carter enjoy the wine, and then informed Liu Feng that she was going to do some business. Liu Feng thought that Nicole had entered just in time, and Baron Carter's face was getting darker and darker. Baron Carter told Liu Feng that he was treated to excellent wine, and sighed as he apologized. Liu Feng asked what was really bothering the Baron. Carter replied to Liu Feng that he had actually returned to the city because of him. Baron Carter explained that everyone knows that during the autumn harvest, thieves on horseback come and loot Xiyang City, but it usually happens in a small group. Carter said that he had learned that thieves on horseback would bring a huge army this year, and therefore the danger had increased many times. Carter said that he couldn't let Liu Feng get into such a difficult situation. Liu Feng thought about how arrogant Baron Carter really was and told him that he was right, of course. Liu Feng asked Baron Carter not to worry about the city since it was sold to him. And now, whether he dies or survives, he will never give up and abandon his city. Liu Feng explained that this was now his responsibility, and he couldn't allow Baron Carter to take the responsibility in his place. Liu Feng added that if Baron Carter had any more information about the horse thieves' schemes, he would be happy to listen to it. Restraining his emotions, Baron Carter replied that he no longer had any information about the thieves, and if Liu Feng had no interest in selling the city, then he didn't dare waste his time anymore and had to leave. Liu Feng told Carter that he hadn't finished his wine yet. Carter thought angrily that he wouldn't let Liu Feng play with him. Fesca asked Baron Carter, who had returned to his manor, when they would take back Xiyang City. Fesca asked his father if Liu Feng was happy with his offer, because these crystal glasses would soon be 3 times more expensive. But Baron Carter only shouted at his son to shut up. Fesca asked his father what was wrong with him and why he was so upset. Baron Carter told his son that Liu Feng had rejected his offer to buy Xiyang City. Fesca asked what was really true and said that that scoundrel Liu Feng really wanted to die. Baron Carter's son ordered the servants to summon all of his knights urgently to see how much Liu Feng could actually stand. But Baron Carter ordered his son to stop and not spoil the whole plan for him. Baron Carter explained to him that Liu Feng wasn't really as simple as he looked. Fesca replied that Liu Feng was just a stupid boy. He asked Baron Carter if he was afraid of him, as if Liu Feng had grown 3 heads and 6 arms. Baron Carter advised his son not to get involved with Liu Feng. He reminded him of how Liu Feng had exposed and killed the grain merchants and explained that an ordinary fool wouldn't be able to plan such a thing. Baron Carter said that there were also plenty of beastmen around Liu Feng to protect him. And so, killing Liu Feng now is risky, and there is a high chance of getting caught. Fesca was indignant and asked his father what they should do then. After all, Haxai City is so big, and they can't let that boy Liu Feng continue to own it and enrich himself. Baron Carter replied that since they could not act openly, they would have to kill him in the dark. And to do that, they needed to catch Liu Feng off guard. Fesca asked Baron Carter what he meant by killing Liu Feng in the dark. Baron Carter explained to his son that Liu Feng had arrived in the city about a month ago, and he still didn't know about all the places and secret passages, and so they can take advantage of this weakness and secretly kill him. Baron Carter asked his son if the assassins they had summoned were still there. Fesca told his father that everything was fine and everyone had arrived. Baron Carter told the assembled assassins that it had been a long time since they had done what they loved to do, and it had been many days since they had killed anyone. The assassins nodded their heads in agreement at Baron Carter's words. Baron Carter told his warriors that the time had come, and that they would be free to kill tonight.